What the problem is divine and national. Right. So the deal is this: it's sovereignty itself does not stand on its own. Right. Sovereignty only comes with nationality. So what we do is we claim our nationality. We already got sovereignty. Right. Now Europeans who are here as occupants and naturalized citizens, they have found out that they have hit a wall because they can't be the sovereign. Right. Now they can be charged for impersonating the sovereign, but you can't. Yeah, I know. Because they can be sovereign when they like Germany, they're German. Yeah. Right? You understand this. Right. A lot of our people didn't really get this at first. Now the other thing that gets me about what we don't seem to did our studies on, and that is like, this whole story. You ain't really a real Moor if you ain't in the temple. All right. Now look. How you going to gain your lost? The prophet said you will gain back your heritage, and lost the state. Seemingly lost the state. But it'll be done in a conflict, can't be total march. Right. Now, to describe to you where that is, you read chapter 47. Right. Now, if chapter 47 describes our geographical boundaries of the empire of the dominions, why we keep acting like it's the Europeans? Yeah. And then, in case you don't realize it, then tell me where is then the estate that the prophet said you were going to gain back? Where is it? Well, you'll never get it if you don't know where it is. You see, these are the common sense things. So what happens is clubism, which is from the corruption. You know that. That's why you won't even be bothered. A lot of people didn't want to be bothered with temples because when you say religion, of course, religion is law, order, and governing principles. Absolutely. And civic. Absolutely. Divine and national. Here's the deal. You can't apply the national if you don't have the divine. That's right. But you can't give the divine to someone.
Yeah, you can't give it to someone. Right. You can't keep recycling the same book. It's not.
That's a corruption.
It's not there.
Let me tell you what it is. It's a corruption and what's called clubism. Yeah. So listen to this. You gotta love this, right? So the guy says, well, you gotta pay dues and you gotta be in the temple in order to be a Moor. What? Young brother comes up with at this point, my son don't matter. Right. Put something one-on-one, opens it up. Oh, so you're only a real Moor if you're in a temple? Let me see. Right. Question number 14. Right. Why are you a Moor? Because you're descendants of prerogative. Excuse me, that's why we're Moors now. Right. Wait a minute, what did you say? Oh, you didn't read this? Yeah. That's when you know that they're steeped in the clubism. Yeah. But in this time now with information, it's kind of being thrown. Right. It's coming off. It's coming off.
Right. I have no choice.
Cause we gotta have like a nation. And I figured it's like remember before people say, well, let me see you drive with no license. Right there, the language they want to know is travel, right? Let me see you do it. Too many people have done it, are doing it. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to stop you. What are you talking about? This is food coming off their plate right now. Right?
Oh,
look at South Carolina.
I did it for 6 years.
Look. Put it on the map.
I can tell you, came up there through Canada on our plates.
See?
Through on our plates. Bam, here go ID.
And there's no problem, is it?
Went straight into Canada.
No problem.
And came back. No problem.
See, it's when you exercise your rights. And you have it right here in your dial plate. And you even if they're gonna hinder you for a minute, you're just gonna be hindered. Hindered but not detained. All right. Well, not arrested.
Right, not arrested.
Wait a minute, let me see. What do you mean you don't know? It's right here. Okay, so now here we are. With identification card. Boom. We got an identification card, got a spirit on it. That the card is self-supporting. I'm just saying the card. Look, we've created. It right there tells you everything you need to know. Everything. National domicile, ancestral estate. It's so hot that people look at it and say, well, I went to, I had to get a credit, federal credit union account for, obvious reasons. And using the EIN, not SSN. I ain't use that because, that's different. That is a whole different problem. So I took the card, right? Well, this isn't a state card. State ID. I said, yes, it is. It's just not a corporate state ID. You got to know how to answer them. You're right. It's not. a corporate state ID, but it's a nation state.
Yeah.
It's nation state ID.
Governmental.
Then you go to the Aboriginal Indigenous rights to establish your own identity that must be respected.
Right.
So now these people
That's what
talking
it
about what is that? Your identity. First of all, how they gonna take your property from you?
It's in the
your
federal-
property.
That's what me and Kucho was talking about. It's in the federal rules of evidence. Self-identification
Yes.
is 901 in the federal rules of evidence.
Right.
Self-identification.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
Can't nobody identify you but you. Matter of fact, this whole mission of the Prophet King was to teach you to be yourself. What do you mean?
Right.
Help me. Who somebody else go to? They can't identify you.
So really,
Right.
So it's there.
it puts a lot of paperwork obsolete.
Right.
Really.
No, see, here's the deal. If you really know what you know, you never need it to be.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
right.
It really puts it out.
And this is why we tell people, you gotta be able to stand without the paper. Matter of fact, this
Right.
brother that came to the class that time, well, I gotta go check the book. I said, no, brother, you standing on your 2 feet. You better know what you're talking about, especially when you come into somebody else's class.
Shit.
And I gotta be on my feet to respond to you.
Yeah.
I think you need to know what
You
you're
better-
bringing.
yeah, you better
Yeah.
come right.
You better not need to have to open that book to say what you gotta say now. You know,
Shit.
but it's you know, we know that ultimately, see, here's what it is. Let me tell you the difference between declaration and proclamation. The prophet said, all you got, if you don't do nothing else, declare. Why? Because it's already proclaimed, really.
Yeah.
But however, proclaiming absolutely means printing, whereas declaring does not necessarily mean that it's in written form. So what you're talking about is the absolution of declaring.
Right.
Here's what's happening. See, when you declare the nationality, it comes from within. You can stand right here and declare it, right? In front of a couple witnesses or to yourself. Then you start being who you are, right? No paper involved.
Yeah.
People are using the paper first and never declaring.
Declaring. Yeah. Think
That's
the
why
paper.
they can't
Think the
stand
paper
on
makes
paper,
them. Yeah.
because it's not the paper.
Right.
But here's the paper. You should study it.
It's the heart,
Right.
like you said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But here's the new thing. I mean, it ain't a new thing. These Europeans, we have found out, occupiers have been claiming the land. Now, we know that land means the building that's on it. We know this already. Nobody should be without a place to live. Nobody. Because it's not theirs. They are saying that they are administrators, right? Well, then they're just proving you're administrator. What are you administrating?
Right.
Our state.
Right. I mean, that you nothing more than trustee, then.
That's right.
Right.
And now, getting to the tribal name. I'm glad that, I know you always knew, but a lot of other people wanted to stop and say I'm an Indian. We're not Indian. Ain't Indian. That name, that tribal family attribute is just a family, what they call tribe name, is a family name. Family of Moors.
Right.
Now it's federalized. It's a coin term, and you don't even want to use that.
Listen,
You know,
because you never were Indian.
that's right.
And if you read Clinton's executive order 10375, I think, don't quote me on that. I'll tell you when it was 1987 implementation of human rights.
Right.
It's 2 pages. Turn it over, double side, right about there, around paragraph 5. You know what he says? He says federally reserved Indians and Native Americans. He makes the
He made
distinction.
decisions.
So they're like, if you're Indian, then you need to go to the BIA, which is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting there because, like the Prophet said, you need each other, but you need each other more later. Not later, it's now. And we can all come together and see that we're one. Because I'm telling you, we could cancel almost all this stuff overnight. The only one thing I want to know, somebody can have, this is what I'm thinking, I'm not sure. When the blood is going to be in the street that we're warned about, right? I don't think it's necessarily our blood unless we're going to get in the way and not know what we're supposed to do.
Because this financial crisis is going to create a civil war, and that's going to be that blood in the street, like you
But
said.
that's the Europeans.
That's the Europeans.
They're going to have a fizzy fit when they find out
Their
that
money is
you
gone.
don't have, you
Yeah.
never did have money.
That's right.
All that you work
It is
for
about that.
isn't yours.
Right.
It's happening now. And you know what they start doing? They start killing politicians.
Yep.
Now, people, I keep hearing over and over again this vision of people saying they're going to be running down the street after attorneys,
Right.
trying to get the attorneys because,
They did.
They're the agents. They're the agents. So I'm thinking
They're the monkeys in the Wizard of Oz.
the blood's not gonna be our blood necessarily.
Right.
Some of us is gonna get mixed up in
Right.
because we won't listen.
Right.
We'll be hard-hearted.
Right.
But for the most part, it's gonna be them. We're gonna have to protect ourselves from the anarchy they're creating, because we know our government is not an anarchy. This government is, we know what it is.
It's gonna be just like the 1930s when they crashed. You know, we was cool.
Hey.
We was cool. Like, oh, for real, that happened? I didn't know nothing about it.
For real.
So, but I think with the vibration of the planet moving faster now, and a lot of people's brainwaves can't keep up with that. What they call a new paradigm is really the movement of the vibration. The vibration of the planet's moving, Earth, everything, and so people are losing their mind now.
Oh yeah.
Am I right?
They
You know what I'm
twerking.
talking about. Am I right?
Right.
That's what's happening.
You're right.
They can't keep up with it.
It's that zombie effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. You know, they always tell us the whole story and all that stuff anyway. Like when I was a little girl, right? Like I know what we are now. We're the raising of the dead from the graves.
Right.
But when you were young, when I was young, and they, I had to go to Sunday school. My parents didn't force us to church, but Sunday school, we live right next door, you know? I had to go there and learn the basics. And my mind was, I don't want to be around when people start coming up out of the grave.
For
They
real.
gonna come up out of the grave.
Bite your neck.
But, now I know what it is.
Yeah, for real.
I know exactly what it is. So,
The Walking Dead. And
yeah, it's the raising of the Walking Dead.
Some of them don't make the full transition.
No, I know. I know. You can put it inside.
sell a cat fraud. Can't believe a company that can't believe a car fraud. Trayvon, Michael Brown, die for us to spine call. The afterlife visited the class brawl. Who they really want to see with the crown on high and the cars on free? I am free and you nothing but your land or your country to see your animal rights. The insatiable delight of knowing thyself and bringing all injustice to light. What the fight is your claim, make your sight for the bright. I the fight in the night. Foresight for you to realize that all lives matter. Black lives don't matter. 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 We don't pay every day. Uplift the fee cause we all pay. We enforce the law and we obey. Core funds from before until today. Reading my Quran and my Torah. Universal laws in more ways. Read 4 chapters, receive it 4 ways. Great divine love rules on first. Before I circle blocks, man, I circle 7 first. You bust the image, but your rhymes hurt. Declare 13 disrespected earth. Love, but it's all in God's plan. Today's mathematics don't judge a man. Unity of life, embodiment of truth. I'm responsible for every deed because I've seen the proof. No, but true. You have to draw it out for you. Cause nationality is not a color I can use. Carry the root. Standing on my square, even without shoes. On the highest authority, spirit of blue. Market coffee, whirlwind times 2. The world's in the wind when the trumpet blew. Stand up, go into your bathroom. You got a big floor to feeling, cut the light on it, and take a good hard look at yourself. You are the Moorish government. You know, and it took me a long time to get to understand that concept. I so-called ambassador. If I can govern myself, if I can govern my household, that's what I should be doing. Why should I walk out of my door and then leave everything that I know about myself in the house to go out and adopt something that I have no knowledge of? So we need to stop asking that question. I ask myself this question. If not me, death and wisdom, my friends, intelligent creatures, guardians of sacred knowledge, all making features. Secrets of the afterlife manifest the present day. Dirty mortals and scoundrels lose their heads in a pleasant way. Deceit and deception, negative past thoughts. Keep the awareness on point, spirit messages never off. Inner realization, encounter the higher self. Explain existence, explain my consistence. Without a foe, you never know the path most resistant. Divinity, my twin flame, side chick and mistress. Metaphysics, Kabbalistic, Albarak mystic, patriarch, statistic. Make my thoughts sadistic, so indigenous. Call me Americanistic, invoking the ancestors. Saracen cryptic, suns on rotation, flows ecliptic, shatter all illusions. Reveal the realistic, sitting in the dark, holding the light marvelous. Recognize the artifice, skin so carbonous, hair so antenna. I feel them from Vienna, myriad of virtues, lessons in reptilian henna. Enlightenment seekers won't find it in mainstream. Focus as a laser, stay balanced like a beam. Not even a gymnast. Whenever I flip this, as above, so below, get out when within this. Don't think I'm a slave cause I speak in English. True, I leave the water, watch your flame get extinguished. Living in your higher, lower self is relinquished. Reputation of master teachers, call it distinguished. Islam, peace and love, Moors. I am Israel. I left L. You are tuned into Moors Heritage and History School. Eyes Wide Open, Eyes Wide Open Blog Talk Radio. I'm here with my noble brethren, Cujo Agbo L. Peace, Moor.
Peace, Moor. Islam, Miz, what's good?
Man, all is well.
All is well.
At the same time, like I said, man, I'm anxious for the real new year, for spring to be here, man.
Yo, for real. You're...
Get there, please, because they say, hey man, find your breaking point and then break it. Like I'm there, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
I'm ready for this weather.
Yeah, we're getting dumped on. We're getting dumped on right now. We're supposed to get some inches. No, maybe some centimeters, but we're supposed to get some centimeters right now. As we speak, it's coming down.
What?
Yeah, we're getting it.
It was degrees out. 68.
Oh yeah, it was earlier today it was raining. It was about 7 or 8 degrees today, and then it rained for most of the day, and then the rain turned to freezing rain sometime after 3, and then the freezing rain turned to snow, and we're getting the snow right now, so it's gonna be a messy morning tomorrow. Yeah, it's gonna be messy out there.
Yeah, I don't even play with those roads when it's like that, bro.
No, not even.
Messages,
Stay out the way. Stay out the way.
Definitely gotta give homage to Mother Nature and in the seasons and the regions and the different changes and everything. So we here back again. Moors Heritage and History School, Sons of Allah, for February 2022. It is the 17th, as you pointed out yesterday, bro. You know, my mom did the one on the actual full moon date. You know, it's still kind of like a foolish moon, if you will. But, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something significant as far as the universe, the culmination of things. Things are changing, you know, rolling back. But I got to say, I noticed this so-called Black History Month, and I know we're not Negro, black, and colored. Noble Drawley laid it out, and what he was saying is verifiable. Excuse me. I definitely want to get into some of our historical references and some of the significations of Moors inscribed in history and place names and things like that. But I gotta ask, bro, because we're in such a different time right now. I recall it might have been last year. The truckers in so-called Colorado, North America, did a protest because one of their fellow truckers had got unjust sentence for some sort of accident. You know what I'm saying? I mean, not to ever minimize the loss of life, but they felt like that wasn't this brother's true intention, and they protested. They locked down the highways in Colorado. I have to ask you, bro, because this is such a significant thing. It's correlative to, I would say, freedom. I know it's about the so-called vaccine mandates, but I think they're more so on the concept of freedom. I could be wrong, but what they're calling a convoy up in Canaanland or whatever.
Yeah.
Is it like y'all feel like any impact in this society? I know we all North America, but does it have any immediate impact that you can recognize as far as how they're treating things up there? And I'm asking you that because this has been in the headlines for about a week, if not more now.
Yeah.
And I do believe you may have touched on it.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that therein is an example of unity, right? Like an actual effect. Like, y'all won't get your shipments, you know what I mean, if y'all don't stop this BS. Like, it actually, in some way, affects the corpse pockets, I would say.
Yeah.
Have any significant changes, like, in the norm of society because of these protests? I know that they were saying, like, when they called to get the truckers towed, all of the tow truck companies was in on it too, and they was like, well, we're not coming to tow anything because we got COVID-19. Right? So, I mean, it's a unique display of unity. How you feel about that going on? I have to ask you that just from the jump. It's not more.
Islam. When I was building with even some Moors out here about it, and you know, from the theatrics perspective, it's making a statement, because like you're saying, if the shipments aren't coming in, then store shelves are empty. Store shelves are empty, then store's useless. But the other side of it was that they implemented the Emergency Act, which in the Emergency Act, they're saying that, you know, we're going to fine and ticket, since the tow people aren't going to do what they're supposed to do. They're going to fine all the truck people if they're blocking certain streets, if they're causing some type of disturbance or whatever. They're going to start hitting them with fines and 5 years in prison if they get too crazy. But it's that process just started. I think that started probably yesterday or the day before or something. So I haven't really tuned in to see exactly what impact that's having, but we do know that they implemented the Emergency Act. And as we know, once they start playing emergency games with people, you know that they're about to take some rights away and all that. The other part of it is that they also started lifting some of the stuff with stores. You know, stores gyms not being open, movie theaters and stuff like that. They're lifting some of those things and them going back to capacity. Now it could be because of the truckers that they're lifting the stuff. But they sort of were announcing maybe right at the beginning of the trucking protests that sometime around this time or March, they're looking to be done with at least the mandates, and you can't go here, you can't go there. But I still think that it's you know, the regular smoke and mirrors, everybody's in on it. The trucker people are in on it with the so-called government people in order to have this thing going on. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't benefit the truckers right now, because out here, gas gone up, fuel's gone up out here. So for them to have their trucks and fuels high and all that stuff, driving trucks up and down the place, is kind of counterproductive, because you're already complaining that you don't have finance because you didn't get the vax, so you can't work, but then you're wasting gas driving up and down the place. And then again, like we're saying, because of the whole fining thing, you know, they can, the so-called government could get their finance back just from fining these people, because there's mad trucks out here. It's not even like a joke thing when they said, you know, the truckers aren't doing stuff but park their truck. The stuff is real. There's trucks crazy. Like, you never seen trucks just on the street like this before. There's trucks out here like regular traffic, you know. Yeah, it's you know, the last 3 years have been so crazy with this thing going up, down, sideways, left, right, and all that. Who knows? You know, time will tell at this point. You know, time will tell. Oh, and Brother Yusuf just put in the chat the meaning of convoy for people who might not have heard. Convoy, a naval force under the command of an officer appointed by government for the protection of merchant ships and others during the whole voyage or such part of it as protection. right? So when we look at the convoy and the whole thing with the naval force, and then we look at the maritime admiralty, the commerce, and trucks are going to commerce, and if the government is appointing the convoy, then that means they work for them. They're boys. They're going to say convoy, and people are going to think a line of trucks going down the street, but that's not a convoy. A convoy is a naval force. You know what I mean? So it's interesting times. It's interesting times to be able to have your popcorn and know what's going on, and just see where certain stuff goes. But I yield the floor.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, that is an interesting perspective, because if it's all a hop, then yeah, maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean? I just know it was making some noise, and people are supporting that in a lot of different places, because I remember when the pandemic first started, they listed a few things that were essential, and so-called truckers were one of the, essential things that had to keep moving. Like when it first happened, they was like, well, we can't shut down the transportation of things, but we can shut the stores down who don't have these things, or whatever it was going on. It was real weird. But yeah, man, I don't know. Just interesting to, hear that perspective from that side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though it's all North America, like. Well, so I remember Last Sons of Allah. Yeah, my fault. I see you posted in the chat. I don't know if somebody's mother passed. If that's the case, rest in peace to the mother and condolence to the family and whatnot. But Last Sons of Allah, we were going in about studying, and I really haven't stopped. I've been hitting up these locations and searching for records and being looked at funny, and librarians like, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, this really happened, and you know what I'm saying? It's been an interesting journey, or quest, however I should say that. And I'm not done, but I just want to share this because what I realized is that our history is everywhere, and there may not always be a plaque to commemorate it or acknowledge it, but it's always there. Like those towns, I don't know, when people travel and you travel through those small towns and you're like, man, I feel something here. Like the energy is up here. I don't know what it is. Usually that is, something significant. Don't ignore that feeling. I'm not saying, go get lost on the Odyssey and not know, but that feeling, that journey, exactly. You get to feel and correlate certain things. So I just want to say this for the region, you know what I mean? When it comes to the underground, the so-called Underground Railroad, so-called Black History Month, as they call it present day, Moors, the way they teach it in school, right, about so-called Black history. I know we're not Black. The closest thing that's acceptable is the definition of Blackamoor, and that's only because it's clear that Black is a description, not actually the people that they're talking about. It makes it clear beyond a reasonable doubt if you know how to read. But this concept of the Underground Railroad, how many Moors and indigenous people who are Moors, how much we actually had to do with that as far as a network that, was beyond words. Like their language was more than just writing. Like it was smoke signals. It was, kites, all of this stuff, right? And place names and things like that. So I just want to give this acknowledgement for my studies of recent on the region of so-called Jersey. I've referenced this book before. It's called The Underground Railroad, Ties That Bound Unveiled by Emma Marie Trusty. And hold on, before I even get into that, I just want to put this reference real clear on the record. I've shared this before, but I feel like I have to say this again before I get into this next reference from the same book. So she goes in on the word black, and I just want to bring this back to make it abundantly clear why Moors, for many reasons, common sense, lawful records, historical records, legal records, how we are technically not black and how this was something introduced by the colonists. It's a very modern concept as far as identity is concerned, right? So, you know, we understand that, like, and it's abundantly clear by the day that the problem in North, South, Central America or Mexum or Almarat is clearly an identity crisis. Like, you know, they say a health crisis, just as serious as that is. You know, there's an identity crisis too. Even though there has been remedy brought and people are, you know, letting it be made known, and Moors are waking up, and not just waking up, but, you know, getting cleansed up as well and living through purity in life to, you know, a certain standard, if you will. But I just want to bring this on the record. So it says on page 87 of the Underground Railroad Ties That Bound Unveiled, it says the names Murray, Gould, and Pierce were identified as Nanticoke, Lenni Lenape. A number of Lenni Lenape remained in Cape May, Cumberland, and Salem. Now, I also understand, you know, Lenni Lenape is not actually a nationality. It's also descriptive. All it means is original people. That's all it means. You know what I mean? It's no different than the gods on the earth saying we original, right? So it's still really not a nationality, but we get it. You know what I mean? But it's like, all right, so a number of Lenni Lenape remained in Cape May, Cumberland, and Salem. Around 1803, most of their tribe was removed from the region by wagon trains and on foot. In early federal census reports of the region, clusters of those with the names of Gould, Pierce, and Murray were identified by MU for mulatto. These cluster patterns seem to authenticate their claim to be Native Americans. Remember, they talking about mulattoes seeming to authenticate their claim to be Native Americans. It says other Native Americans remained in the South Jersey region of darker complexions. They were simply classified as black in early federal documents. This is where, you know what I'm saying, this is how they became known from the original people of darker complexions to just simply be for black in early federal documents. So I would say, according to Noble Drew Ali, that wouldn't be a true and divine record then, right? Because that's not who they were prior to these quote early federal documents. So that's on page 87, but I say that to preface this part that I want to read and how this is blatantly relative to Moors. Because according to this so-called, these locations or these safe homes and safe spaces, you know, they had certain place names to let you know. So, in one region, it's a place called Othello. There's a place called Othello. Yeah. Othello in Amberry Hill Cemetery, Underground Railroad contribution. This is on page 131 of the same book. So, this is what it says. Othello is located on southwestern shore in Greenwich Township, Cumberland County. Before the community was named, reference was made to the head of Greenwich. Othello is 1/2 mile from Springtown and 3/4 of a mile from Greenwich. We will look at Othello's founding, the name of the place, his contribution to the URR or Underground Railroad, and their bold resolve. Now, these are not my own words because we know how they, you know, kind of rewritten history. So we got to know, like, when they say free blacks, they're really talking free Moors, right? We know that. It's just that, you know, they use the colonial word to really cover it up, but we know how to refine and understand and comprehend what it is we're actually reading. So this is what this was interesting. So it says free blacks or free Moors began settling at the head of Greenwich after the Revolutionary War. Jacob Bryant was among them. Deed to the Bryant family property is dated 1802. According to Jacob's descendants, a Bell Bryant, quote-unquote free blacks from all over the Northeast region flocked to Othello to settle. Remember Othello? It says citizens also came from Delaware, Maryland, and other free states and points farther south. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to omit this part and get to the next part. It says some persons believe the community chose the name Othello after the play Othello was performed in the Presbyterian Church at Greenwich. The village was officially named around 1888 as a post office designation. The attitude of Othello, however, was more than the name of a place. This name described the character of a person on a mission. It held special meaning for so-called blacks, whether fugitive or free. Because it goes on to say Othello the Moor, a so-called black man in the military service of Venice, was also the principal character in Shakespeare's 17th century tragedy. So-called African-American conductors of the URR personally identified themselves as principal participants. Othello's position correctly described the mission they performed. So you had people in the so-called network of the Underground Railroad who blatantly was calling themselves places after Moorish names, characters, and, you know, mental states of mind. So these so-called Underground Railroad operators called themselves principal participants because Othello was the principal character in Shakespeare, and we know blatantly that Othello was the Moor. You know what I mean? So when we look at these place names today, we may not really connect that there's a deeper history there that, you know, whether these people were considered free or slave, they recognize that, hold on, Othello, that's relative to the Moor. And the Moor still has relative aspects to freedom. They knew this on the Underground Railroad. You get what I'm saying? So I really, that hit me a different type of way because I never even really paid attention to that. And when I seen that this is how they was talking about the region, I'm like, okay, so that's what our people called the place name. And this was so-called Underground Railroad operations, but they blatantly were paying homage to Moors. I don't know, but I know that meant something to me. So I just wanted to share that from the jump. The fact that we original people, Moors, right, were labeled black in early federal documents, and then keeping it to the times of our history, even on the Underground Railroad, they had place names and safe houses named after Moors. So, you know, that really stuck with me, bro. I just wanted to share that from the jump. And I know you was mentioning something about Marcus Garvey and the opinions and philosophies of Marcus Garvey. And I recall in there, he was speaking about how, you know, the so-called Negro would not be happy until he had his own nation. I don't know if you still want to go somewhere with that, but I definitely wanted to hear what you was talking about or mentioning about what you had to say about, somebody had something to say about Marcus Garvey, if you will, bro.
Yeah, Islam. Pre that, just to put this out there, the making reference to what you were talking about, there's a book by Lewis Hughes called 30 Years a Slave by Lewis Hughes. And this is about this part is about the dress code, the dress code of the slaves. Right? This is the chapter talking about the dress code of the slaves. Where was I at? These shoes, before being worn, had to be greased with tallow, with a little tar in it. It was also a happy time when the men got these winter goods. It brought many a smile to their faces, though the supply was meager and the articles of the cheapest. The women's dress for winter were made of the heavier wool cloth used for the men. They also had one pair of shoes and a turban. I remember once when Boss went to Memphis and brought back a bolt of gingham for turbans for the female slaves. It was a red and yellow check, and the turbans made from it were only to be worn on Sunday. The old women were so glad that they sang and prayed. I wore pants made of Boss's old ones, and all his old clothes were utilized for me. They rounded them off at the tail just a little and called them jackets. My shoes were not brogans, but made of lighter leather and made suitable for in the house. The cotton clothes worn by both men and women, and the turbans of the latter, were snowy white, as were the wool hats of the men, all contrasted with the dark faces of the wearers in a strange and striking manner. So just going back to what you were saying, that they're going to name these places after Moors. When you check the dress code of the slaves, the so-called slaves, they're wearing turbans and all that, which is Moors. When you talk about the Underground Railroad, they have to follow the North Star, which is astrology, which again goes back to Moors. While they're following the North Star, they're on their way to Canaan, which is going back to Moors again, right? When on the Underground Railroad, they had code. So some of the code was done on quilt. So they would have certain designs in the quilt that would be messages to, those on the Underground Railroad, which way to go, when to look out for the slave master, when to look out for the bounty men, when to look out for where the river is at, where the bridge is, don't walk on the bridge, walk under the bridge, all this stuff written in quilt, in code. And then we know all code comes from Morse code, which is Morse code, MORSEMOORS, Morse code, right? When they have the little thing, and then they're sending the messages or whatever. All this is relative to us. So when we correct Black history and start talking about Moorish history, or start talking about, the history of, and we don't say slaves, but we start talking about our people, know that it's absolutely, positively relative to us and how we got into these same statuses that Noble Drew Ali came, crushed those things to smithereens, talking about we're not that. And it's a new era of time now, and all men must proclaim their free national name. All men must have a nationality. And if you don't have a nationality, don't get mad when all the citizens abuse you, violate you, and do whatever else that they want to you, which again goes into, the whole thing of getting out of slavery, and the history being that all you had to do was change your dress code and slavery's over. Just remember the Django movie. About all he did was change his dress code. All he did was take master's jacket and master's boots, and then all of a sudden slavery doesn't apply to him anymore. He gets to ride horses and all that stuff. He gets his own saddle. He gets to pick out his own hat and all that, because certain people weren't slaves. Majority of us were free people that fell into bondage because guy over there said we look like somebody on their plantation, so they kidnapped you. Right? Same stuff that they're doing today with Moors. They see Moors and say, well, you should have a license and all that stuff. No, I shouldn't. Why should I? Why do you even assume that I have one? Because the pattern has been keep us in this slave narrative, but not tell us really what's going on with the slave narrative. Again, the slave's place is called Othello. Everybody knows Othello's the Moor of Venice. That's not, you know what I mean? That's not news. Everybody knows that, right? What we just read, the slaves wearing turbans. Why are slaves wearing turbans for? What's the purpose of slaves wearing turbans unless they know who they are? And not only they know who they are, but masters going out and buying the turbans for them, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. The book again is 30 Years a Slave by Lewis Hughes, and the chapter was the dress code of the slaves. So what you were alluding to was this book, little pamphlet that I got. I've been taking this in because one of these YouTube personality people were talking about how Garvey was a sellout because he knew all these Europeans, and they brought up this European by the name of Ernest Cox, who has this book called White America, and it's pretty much like, you know, the quote unquote white supremacist handbook type of thing. And this individual, Ernest Cox, wrote this little book called Let My People Go. And the book was in honor of Marcus Garvey, you know, and pushing the idea that Marcus Garvey's onto something, because he's saying, you know, the black people should have their own stuff, just like us, the white supremacists, are saying that the white people should have their own stuff. This is how he's talking throughout the book, and giving the highest honors to Marcus Garvey for standing on that and stressing the point to the people who read the book that, you know, this is where it's supposed to be at, you know. And like we were talking about in one of the lives earlier in the week, is that you know, they have the reference of, well, the black man should be able to have his own government, so he should be able to go back to Africa and the land of his forefathers so he can have his own stuff and whatever, which we know they're doing that in order to steal your birthright here, because they don't want to go back to where they came from. They want to chill. So we take that part out of it, you know, the whole back to Africa thing, and talk about, well, why don't we set up our own thing here? And then that leads you right up to Noble Drew Ali, which is around the exact same time that he was writing to Garvey. It's around the exact same time that the Europeans realized that they even got railroaded, got new deals and all that stuff. Now they got to be, you know, classified as wards, just like everybody else, you know. And when you read, you know, of course there's all this connotative language and stuff in there, but the message, the point that he's bringing up is the whole idea of the separation of the races, and the idea that, you know, the yellows should be with the yellows, the white should be with the whites, the black should be with the blacks, so that they can govern themselves and not have somebody governing them. The quote unquote black man supposed to be able to look up and not see the white man towering over him, because, you know, the black man's in his own land, and the white man's not supposed to look down and see the black man under his heel, because there should be no black man there. He should be in his own land. But again, going back to the idea, going back to the fact that not all of us came from somewhere else. Majority of us were already here. So when we talk about this idea that he was alluding to with giving Garvey honors, we go back to the Noble Drew Ali lesson that it is most earnestly hoped that the Moorish Science Temple of America will not be confused with any Back to Africa movement because we're already from here. And if we apply that stuff that he's talking about, this is European, get rid of the Africa thing and start dealing with this from the perspective of us being in our own land and, you know, the separating being our part and parcel of this said government, because we're, you know, remember U.S. and Canada and whatever that they call governments, those have nothing to do with us. We're not part and parcel to those. We're part and parcel to this said government, ours. We're part and parcel of our own. We're not part and parcel of some European version of government or what they set up for themselves. Oh yeah, well, our ancestors, so we got to be part of that. No, we're supposed to be having our own stuff, you know. But it's profound how this European was talking so highly of Marcus Garvey. We can't even get our own people to look at Garvey how this European was looking at Garvey. Like he had him how Moors have Noble Drew Ali. Like, this guy is the man. We need to support him. This is what he's telling the Europeans. We need to support him. We need to back him. We need to let all the black people know about their guy, Marcus Garvey, who is trying to do this for them and do that for them. And it was just sort of a rekindling, a reawakening of the idea that the whole separatist perspective is where Drew Ali went, starting up his own stuff, because he told these Moors, if you want European Grand Sheiks, I could give them to you if you want that. You know, and he told these Moors in Detroit and all that stuff, they got black this, black that, black, they have their own stuff. So what more do you want? What do you want me to do? Kill you? You got your nationality. You got all the people in the seats of power that you want, from Grand Sheikh down to Grand Mufti. Right? Everything's there for you. So why not just be yourself and have your own? You know? And again, like when I was reading some excerpts of the White America book, and he was making reference to how the quote unquote white man is not this superior being like that. We just want to have our own, because, you know, if we mix, then we're diluting ourselves if we mix. So why would we mix to dilute ourselves? But, you know, not going all the way with saying, well, the whole point of not diluting is for you Europeans to go back where you came from if you don't want to mix. It's not to stay here if you don't want to mix. You should actually be going back where you came from, you know. But of course, you already know they're not going to go there, because as soon as they go there, it's done for them. And they have no intentions of leaving this place anytime soon, especially once they have our people so docile and playing the Negro black colored thing and all that. But it's a little small book called Let My People Go by Ernest Sevier Cox. And it was just something to have in the archive because of how hard this modern European was going for Marcus Garvey and his message. So some of the things it talks about in there is the methods of how they can do it, the whole idea of the new nation for these quote unquote races, the problem that they have with the Negro not having his own and wanting to integrate. And yeah, it was just a good slap to the face, you know, by a European to show how we don't even honor our own. If these Europeans are going this hard for Garvey, and also in Philosophies and Opinions, Garvey, there's some letters in there that Garvey wrote with regard to him and the White America book, telling all the Garveyites that they need to get the White America book so you can see where this European's mindset is at and see where your mindset needs to be. Because if he's talking like that about his race, then who are you to not be on the same program as these modern Europeans and setting up to have your own? And we already know Garvey was about having our own. You know, he was about the Black Cross nurses. You know, he was about the African Legion. You know, he was about Black Star Line. You know, he was about repping for us to have our own, you know, not having to rely on them. And if you didn't, what did he tell you? You're a race of good for nothings and a race of imbeciles if you don't want to have your own stuff. So yeah. So that's what that was about.
Facts. Wow, that's dope. I also just wanted to highlight, shout out to everybody in the chat too, on Canaanland Moorish YouTube. Yusuf made an excellent comment or pointed out something about the place name Othello. Like, this was at a time where they allegedly weren't able to read and write, but had the wits enough to, you know, name a freedom safe haven Othello relative to a Moor. Well, how would they know that reading and writing, right? Because this is directly derived from classic literature.
Right.
To imply something, you know what I mean? So yes, at that time, you know, it goes to show like all of us were not slaves.
Yeah.
So I also just wanted to read this from page 154 of the same book. The Underground Railroad Ties That Down Unveiled by Emma Marie Trusty. She says, well, it's not that she's saying, these are the facts. On page 154, she says, New Jersey law considers, quote unquote, black people slaves unless they could prove themselves free. All right, and I'm going to say that again. New Jersey law considered black people slaves unless they could prove themselves free. How would a slave prove themselves free? Just based off of being black. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is where nationality comes into play. Like, this was serious. You know what I mean? It is serious.
Yeah.
So it says the prima facie law was in force. And then it says in 1821, the Supreme Court of New Jersey ruled that the principle of this law existed from colonial times. All black men in contemplation of the law are prima facie slaves and are to be dealt with as such. All our laws upon this subject are founded upon this principle, and all men of this quote-unquote color are to be dealt with on this principle. So this is how they, you know what I mean? This is, you know what I mean? When Moors are going hard declaring their nationality, this is the environment that they kind of fostered in a sense, because it's like, well, hold on. If, quote unquote, all black people are slaves unless they could prove themselves free, well, you know, there's a lot of history to prove such. You know what I mean? Like, in principle, I don't know, because, all right, remember, the Constitution of 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared equal and free, then, you know what I mean, there's no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendment, according to Noble Drew Ali, right? But, you know what I mean, in 1821, this was still the prima facie law, like prior to that. Because remember, what was it, 1779? Noble Drew Ali says the nationality of the Moors was taken away and they were given names, Negro, black, colored, etc., because because we honor not the principles of our foremothers and forefathers.
Yeah.
Right? So if the prima facie, which is, on its face, it's not actual fact, it's like the presumption is, if this is what you identify as, you a slave unless you show and prove something else. That's really, I can imagine, the aspects and how important, and still to this day, how vital that aspect of declaring and proclaiming your nationality is, especially with this being the prima facie law. You know what I mean? In 1821, after the declaration that declared all men equal and free. But again, remind you, that's prima facie law, as they say. So, when you're dealing with a colored system, because as you mentioned, talking about being part and parcel, like, we're not part and parcel of color of authority.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're not part and parcel of color of law. You know what I mean? That's not what he was talking about. We're talking de jure, right? So in the de jure law, because there's obviously a duplistic system that is undeniable, right? It's on the record. Like, these were the presumptions, and then you had to prove otherwise. So, and it's kind of annoying in a sense because, like, you always want to have to prove yourself. To who? For what? You know what I mean? You are who you are.
Right.
But this is how the systemic oppression was going.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets to a point where you're tired of seeing the same thing. Like, you know yourself, you be yourself. Who are you really trying to prove something to? Unless, but then, you don't want to get on the docile side of it either because, at the same time, if you're just saying this and accepting that, you accept the treatment that comes with it. The connotations that it has, the implications that it has as far as being quote unquote black without a nationality. You can't really tie into national law on those records. You know what I mean? Like, and again, this is all prima facie law. So, I mean, I could just imagine, the systemic oppression is not just some Karen's attitude at Walmart. You know what I'm saying? Like, this literally was and is a systemic thing. Like, there's a system set up just for this, to presume or assume you're a slave unless you prove otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, if you're considered as black, this is not me saying that. Like, that's what's entrenched in the U.S. corporate system. You know what I'm saying? Remember, these are the same people who are fighting to keep human beings in slavery and in servitude, etc. Pardon me, slavery for a lack of better word, or involuntary servitude, right? So, it's really interesting. They fought and waged an attack on society, meaning, like, if I was helping you get out of a slavery situation or an abusive situation, they would try to find me saying I was withholding their profits. Like, that's crazy, right? And then go to court and to have a claim to be heard when this is the most inhumane concept of life we're talking about. Like, how do you even entertain this claim of another human being being your property that you didn't father, you didn't, carry in your womb for 9 months, and you're saying you own this person?
Yeah.
Like, that, to me, that's just crazy. And for that to even be heard, you know what I mean? Like, how they dismiss claims for lack of dismiss suits and everything, citing failure to state a claim for which relief could be granted. Like, how do you even hear this as, like, how did that even become normalized? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of ill, bro. It's kind of ill.
Yeah.
People possess it, But yeah, I just wanted to add that on, like, yo, it's a real thing. Like, this is not something Moors made up and we're saying we're not black just because we don't like our people. Like, no, there's legal, lawful history that goes with what these brands actually imply or affirm. You know what I mean? Under color of law. And that's why it's to know the law, especially regarding yourself, your person, your you know what I mean, birthrights, because this is psychologically entrenched in what their old systemic thing is doing under color of law, man. So again, with that being said, man, I can't stress enough how important having a nationality is now and was then and forever will be. You know what I mean, more? Like
Now,
that's
let me ask you this question. Do you think in Drew Ali's time that he was dealing with the whole like that in denial thing, like we're dealing with in this time as heavy, or do you think it was more people open to the info back then? Because every time, like when I go through the literature, and you know, the more that you go through it, the more things sort of stand out. It's almost as if he was trying to get the last ones in the message. You know what I mean? Like everybody was near down with this whole thing about nationality, whether they were fed up of slavery, whether they were slaves that are emancipated, and then, well, once they're emancipated, what are you gonna do? Well, you know, you're gonna go join the temple and get yourself right. You know, it seems like it's more of a brainwash now than it would have been back then. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say the same thing too. Okay, when Noble Drew Ali came on the scene, like he blatantly called out that there was an issue of mental slavery. I think that in this day and time, it's still there.
Right.
I really think it's still there, and you know, it's interesting. What I find to be the root of the problem is that people do not read. Like, I'm not saying that to say, oh, we're smarter or better than anybody, but like some of the stuff we say on this line over the years, like you can link up with people and have them read it themselves, and it just hit different. You know what I'm saying? Because now they're actually reading it. But I do think people were more open to it back then. But I do think the stubbornness or the opposition was just as real, or if not realer back then. Because, you know, he called it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was the one who was. I traveled in the South, and it was the work of my people practicing those things that bring dishonor and disgrace to any nation that lives the life. But at the same time, I think that maybe it was more at, okay, Noble Drew Ali was born in the 60s. So, like, he was right in this era of the illusion of freedom, or, you know what I mean, the emancipation era, in a sense. Like, I mean, excuse me, I said the 60s, the 80s part. But that's still not too far, like, coming out of that era, right? So I think he came, if he's a prophet sent by Allah, as you say he is, right? I think he came to deal with the aftershock of that way of living through a few generations. Now it's like a new era of time. So he's here in a kind of sort of new era of time, right? Like some people have been freed. The servitude or the slavery is kind of more like chattel now. You know what I mean? It's more paperwork, like, you know what I'm saying? So, but I do think that the sellout was just as real back then. And again, he said it, you know what I mean? Like, it was people amongst him that was on the BS. It wasn't really, you know what I mean? It wasn't just outside of Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Knights Temple. Like, it was inside. So we kind of see the same thing today. You got people claiming to be Moors and acting like they're repping Noble Drew Ali and are absolutely opposed to his teachings, right? Or they'll take this one part and act like that's it. Like, we're supposed to be in the temple. That's it. That's all. Like, Noble Drew Ali, let's be very clear. He did not come just to talk to people in the temple, because his warnings, his divine warnings was to the nations, plural. So he wasn't just talking to members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. He was talking that talk to nations, right? So what was his message outside of, to the world? You know what I'm saying? Outside of you all who was congregating on these days, right? The Moors who were going to these temple meetings faithfully and, you know, actually not just trying to carry on his tradition, but living in it while he was establishing it, right? Like, imagine that. They're getting to listen to this man, see his vision, you know what I mean? And then also you had those who was in the same position, listening to him, seeing his vision, and was trying to plot against it. You know what I mean? Like, he was the one saying, you know, there's a host of jealousy in this movement. They're jealous of my fame and nobility. It wasn't all love. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though that was the principle, it was a reality that, you know, the other opposite energy existed too. So I think we still see the same thing. Like, so when he said, yeah, those who were against me then are against me now, if you're with me then, or if you're with me now, you're with me then, you was with me then, or, you know what I mean? I think it's the same, it's an energy. It's an energy. There has not been, you got to remember, even when, and it's just something that exists. Like, even if we was to take it back to, okay, well, there was people who were slaves, and then you had those who were willing to run away off the plantation. We could take that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you had people who was willing to run, but then you had people who was willing to snitch and tell master and tell them what the route is. They were thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so you gotta remember that this is an energy. You know what I'm saying? This is a mental state of, you know what I mean? And that's why we might, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, man. It's interesting. We could all proclaim to be Moors, but all of us really aren't the same.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, you see it and whatnot. You have people who are downplaying, right? And I think it's more so they're jealous because certain Moors got this message out. So, you know, instead of saying, hey, I disagree with Noble Drew Ali, they'll say that we Moors, you know what I mean, are wilding because that's not what Noble Drew Ali taught when he taught it. You know what I mean? You got to read the lines as plain as day, or read between the lines, whatever you got to do to comprehend. You know, when this man said there's no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendment, that's jurisdictional. So don't miss me. You can definitely miss me with that. Noble Drew Ali wasn't challenging jurisdiction. It's right in his divine warning to the nations, man.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? If you don't comprehend that, that's one thing. But don't act like, you know, you right and exact and every other Moor is wrong because you miscomprehend what was being said and what was said prior to any Moors that are alive today, even being manifested in the flesh. You know what I'm saying? So I look at it like, yeah, pardon me, to answer your question direct though, I really think that it's kind of about the same, but I do think more people were open to it back then. It just wasn't as accessible as it is now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it was as accessible as it is now. And it's kind of a shame because you would think with all the information that is available, you know, people
at this time,
But it's like information and you still don't know. Like, you literally don't. Like, by the time you called me, you could have punched in some good research on, and I would say this too. Don't just stop at whatever the first thing is that pops up on Google as your reference point. Like, you're not getting in the books and then doing ancillary research from what you're reading in the books. And you know what I'm saying? You it's kind of like lazy research. You know what I mean? So people are formulating opinions off of their feelings and not really dealing with the facts. You know, or they spin the facts as if that's it. Like, it's so much history. I think people see it from their point of view, but there is some intentional narratives that are being spun. And I think you ended Brother Yusuf a couple of weeks ago for addressing this. And you pulled up the article from the Southern Poverty Law Center, right? And how they had to pay out And like, look, man, we know anymore that's been more over a decade or pre-COVID. I can't. I would say it all had to happen, bro. It all had to happen, so we could clearly see who's doing what's what. All of the people who were selling out, who are actually stuck in pre-COVID era. They don't even realize what changed.
Yeah.
Right? When you got Southern Poverty Law Center retracting their hate map, you know what I'm saying, in 2020, and people are using them as a reference in 2022, like this is accurate. They retracted and apologized because they realized they were contributing to the over-policing of what, you know, they were labeling as, quote, sovereign citizens, black identity extremists. Remind you, we're not black, but that's how the Southern Poverty Law Center was trying to label us.
Yeah.
Right? So when they apologized doing that or retracted that, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it was. Like, they were putting so many people in one group, because we could take it back to the days even of the Quakers. The Quakers were also, you know, some of them were helping on this mission to freedom, right? So I could see the perpetual energy that, you know, lived even while Noble Drew Ali was alive, when he said, you know, the Europeans are helping me, why not you?
Why not you?
If the Quakers are, if the underground network was not, it was based off of freedom and lack of discrimination, right? So, in a sense, because the Europeans had the safe houses too, right? But they had code words. So, they would send smoke signals, right? Bringing people who were on their way to freedom, whether that be to so-called New Jersey or Canaanland. Either way, you know what I mean? Like, these were routes to get to those points. So, the Europeans would know the code. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, look, the message is somebody come knock on the Quaker's door and they like, all right, it's a friend with a friend. That means that they had runaway slaves, right? So-called runaway slaves, whatever their nationality may have been, right? That was the code word for them to open up the door and let them use the safe house. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we got baggage. Baggage means that, look, there's a drop-off so these people could cross over the so-called Mason-Dixon line and be in the free territory, right? It was a lot of code words going in that people of all Europeans and more, you know what I'm saying, were in on this thing. That's why it was like a lot of European abolitionists in the north, but then again, you still had Europeans who were pro, quote-unquote, slavery, no matter what somebody's nationality was. Like, that's the real history, yo.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
and speaking about
history, so when I see him,
no, go ahead, Mark, finish up.
yeah, you know, so when I see him saying something like, Europeans are helping me, why not you? That kind of has always been the case. You know what I mean? Think back to when the British and the French were fighting here in America. It took up different Aboriginal tribes as allies from different regions, whether, you know, the Pontiac Wars, whatever, in the so-called Michigan region. You know what I'm saying? Like, different Europeans took up different allies of indigenous people. So it was never like all the way all of us versus all of them. It was kind of a mixture on both sides, right? So if the French could say, well, we're going to get the Moors from the south to be our allies, and the British say, well, we're going to get the Moors from the north to be our allies, and promise them, quote, freedom or whatever the promise is, you had different nationalities, you know what I mean, kind of like on the same side opposing, you know, different ideologies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I know he was trying to add something.
Yeah, no,
It's just a lot when you
when you were talking about people on both sides, it brought to my memory, somebody asked in the chat about the origin of the term Underground Railroad, and I remember it having to do with some runaway slave who was swimming across a river or something like that to escape the slave master. And when the slave catchers or whatever got to the shore, they couldn't find him. And the word is that he disappeared on some underground railroad. And then the term got applied to, oh, well, these people obviously have people who are keeping them hidden when they escape from slavery, right? And then everybody who assisted them along the way became a station of the railway that they were using that was not in plain sight, which is why I hated the term when they said underground hip hop or whatever, because that stuff's not supposed to be hidden. That's supposed to be in the open. You know,
ask you that. What about that?
Say that again?
So, I was just about to ask you, how do you feel about that term even continuing into hip hop?
Oh, for real?
All the best artists are quote.
Yeah.
Why is that? They're not extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
so,
You know, this idea that in order to get our freedom, we have to hide. You know, in order for us to be free, it can't be something that's, you know, like you're saying, mainstream. It has to be, you know, you have to be secretive. You know, you can't walk through the bushes too fast because you step under the dog's gonna hear, and then you know what I mean? Like, it's supposed to be an open thing. So, but yeah, when you were talking about the abolitionists, it jogged my memory about reading about that. I can't remember where it was that I read it. Some slavery book. Can't remember what book it was. But it was making reference to, it was telling the story about this slave who escaped, and you know, like the mindset that the slave catchers had was that, like, dude disappeared into thin air. Like, yo, we just seen him get out the water, and we got out the water, and then he wasn't there. But obviously there were other people there, so they figured that somebody's helping with this thing. You know what I mean? And then that's the whole thing with the abolitionists, and, you know, thinking that their own was helping, you know, which goes back to the whole thing with the wars, the infighting between these Europeans about whether they should have slaves or not. Right? Because logically, you should want to have slaves. You know what I mean? Why would you be European and not want to have a slave? You know what I'm saying? That's the in thing. But the reality is that there were people on their side of the nation that thought slavery was a joke and unreal, and said, oh, there's something going on here. And then they started treating all these abolitionists just like how they treat the slaves or whatever, lynching them and all that stuff. Do your history on that, about these people who were helping people escape, and the punishment they got for helping. And that's their own.
And this was, yeah, and that was a quote unquote federal law, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the Workplace Slave Act, the Fugitive Slave Act, like we're talking about what they call law, right? So this is coming from, you know, higher levels, right? This is not your local politics.
Right.
This is like a serious agenda, right? So hold on. You know what I mean? If we're gonna enact this in Congress, if somebody helps, you know, somebody get to freedom, you know, they could be charged, you know, for tampering with property or whatever. Like, they really seen people like this, you know, and so, you know, it goes to a certain mind state. It speaks to a certain mind state, you know?
Yeah.
And the attitude itself sad, but it's true that mind state is still around to this day. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, in one form or another, like, that's still that energy. Because what? Energy never dies, it's only transformed or transferred.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, where did that energy go? But to say that, I mean, I'm going to just add this in. On page 154, the Act of Congress in 1793 provided for the return of runaway slaves from any state to which they had fled. The law was developed to maintain the status quo of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
For quote-unquote black people, designed to assure their perpetual servitude. Perpetual, that means forever, like, you know what I'm saying? And the next generation, and the generation after that. Like perpetuity, right? It says to aid or abet anyone escaping slavery became a federal crime. Subversive acts resulted in fines, imprisonment, branding, and execution for anyone engaged in or suspected of anti-slavery activity. Human beings claimed as personal property were given pets names and treated worse than animals. This peculiar institutional property claim of American slavery increased individual efforts by quote-unquote blacks to seek and gain freedom. Something in the human spirit made quote-unquote slaves know they were born to be free. Something in the human spirit
Something.
made slaves know they were born to be free. Because the shit ain't right. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like, you know, if you feel like something's wrong, more than likely something's wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, right? So the fact that they even took it that far, like, meaning like they really felt like this is what their thing was built off of, you know? And this is 1793 too, might I add. So this is Constitution going on, everything. And you still have people with this mind state because, you know, status is still a real thing in law. So if it's mental slavery, you know, this is again where they get into wardship, incompetence. Somebody got to take care of the incompetent, you know what I mean? Well, then they'll claim to do it, claim them under wardship. And you know what I mean? That's how they get personam jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But still more like, you know, it was an actual act of Congress, an act of Congress. You know what I mean? So this isn't constitutional, but it's an act of Congress. This wasn't prescribed in the Constitution, the organic Constitution. But they definitely was trying to maintain the status quo of slavery. So again, and on the same page, it goes into, again, that, you know, New Jersey law considered quote-unquote black people slaves unless they can prove themselves free. So when I hear this, right, and something in the human spirit made slaves know they were born to be free,
Yeah.
right, it goes again back to Noble Ali as far as his call out and what the principles were. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I think in those times, there were a lot of people who could resonate with that. But then again, like we say, you know, you had some of our own people who look just like us, you know, who had opposing views. They were on the other side. They wanted to perpetuate slavery. You know what I mean? So it's kind of more, it's deep, it's more than skin deep. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? We've all heard the phrase. It's not skin deep. It's deeper than that. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, like it's really ill. But it is what it is, you know.
Straight.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, more. I know it's in 10:22. There is a couple callers with their hands up in the queue.
Oh yeah, we can see
You want
what
to
the
add something on before we get into
well, yeah, we could answer the calls, but just to stress the point again, honors to the Prophet for bringing us our nationality and getting us out of that slave status, so we don't have to deal with all that. You know what I mean? Separating ourselves from from the ones who are making the claim of being that, you know, that we're absolutely different. There's ones of us who think that we're not supposed to be slaves or whatever and stay it, and then there's ones who think we're not supposed to be slaves and do something about it. You know, so be on the side of the ones who are doing something about getting out of the slave status, you know, from whatever assumed jurisdiction you fall in, whatever slave status it is, right? Whatever slave status it is, know that, especially for the people who are just coming into this, know that you're where you're supposed to be, right? Talking about your nationality and, you know, knowing that you're Moorish, knowing that your ancestors are Moors, knowing that you're a Moor, knowing that a Moor came and told you when everybody else was playing games with you. Know that you're on the path, right? We're not Negro, black, colored, because those are slave brands. We're not that. We can't be that, and no one could make us that. And we have to be, ultimately, we have to be ourselves if we're gonna get out of this stuff that we're in. If we don't be ourselves, then, you know, as they say, the struggle continues. But I yield on that more.
That's it. And I want to say, Morris, I have no doubt, you know what I mean? Acknowledgement to the prophecies manifesting and manifested, past tense, you know. A lot of people don't realize how big of a switch, because we kind of like still in it, you know what I mean? For those who may not have or really paying attention to what happened, like it just shifted. Like the prophecy is here, right? Like it says, when the wheels of industry stop and start again, it'll be in the favor of the Asiatics. Remind you, we are in those times, right? So, you know, I mean, it's like, it's crazy as it is, as it feels. I mean, some people, this is normalized now. I know we gotta adapt in life and, you know, survive these times and whatever times we in. But it's just interesting that, like, right now, it's wide open for Moors. Like, it is wide open for Moors. You know what I mean? All we gotta do is position ourselves wherever stage you at. I know we don't all have the same exact day-to-day life situations or problems or solutions or experiences, but the overall experience for us as a people on this planet here in America, you know what I mean? Like, in general, it is wide open for us. You know what I mean? We just have to make the best of it. And that may be easier said than done, but we are in those times, you know. I see a lot of people, it's still, even if we think COVID is real, fake, whatever, it's still having its shockwaves or its reverberations to this day. Like, you know, they're just getting to the point where they're letting people go based off of the vaccine or not, and ending negotiations. And what I realized too is, you know, we Moors, we have valid reasons, not that anybody else doesn't, but like our hesitation, I don't even want to say hesitation, and I'm speaking for those who are definitely not taking the vax, right? Like, for legitimate historical reasons of the experiments that went on our people specifically.
Yeah, no conspiracy, like, no conspiracy theory. Yeah, no conspiracy theory. Yeah. We're not anti-vaxxers and all that stuff. But that's not what we're saying. Don't look at us like them people who are against the jab as well. You know, we're not the same.
No, exactly. We're saying y'all got that off one or two times maybe, but not on our own conscious watch. Like, we're not doing it again. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, in light of that, like, that on its own merit, they looking for what religious reason do you have, or why do you want to be religiously exempt? It's deeper than that. You know what I mean? Like, all praise to Allah and the divine and national rights and protections protected by the First Amendment, but it's like some people don't get that it's even deeper than that. Like, regardless of your religion, it's like, yo, do you understand? Like, they made us subjects of an experiment, of multiple experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And the CDC was in on it. You know what I mean? Like, if that's not enough, if I got to explain outside of that, then you know what? Forget it. But what I've realized, though, is there's a lot of people in these, state and city jobs who are opposed to the mandate of it. They're not so much saying, hey, look, we don't want to take the vaccine just because we don't want to take the vaccine. Their position is like they shouldn't have to be forced to take one, right? And I respect that too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I respect that because it's like, even if we look at Kyrie Irving, right? He's a beast on the basketball court. I gotta use him as an example because
best
this is
example.
real talk.
Yeah.
Like, he's a beast on the basketball court. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to get into a sports commentary, but he's a beast, right? If it wasn't for him, I don't know if LeBron would have won the joint in Cleveland, right? But let's say he never won the chip, none of that. Like, you're asking somebody who is a professional athlete to possibly for whatever reason, possibly compromise their genetics, right? So, like, even on that level alone, if he's like, look, I was given this God-given athletic ability, and I don't want to compromise that and or my future generation. Is that not enough? That's not a good enough reason.
What more you want? What more you want?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Simply just be that. If he take the shot, compromise his genetics, and he say, hey, look, I'm not a beast no more because things ain't been the same since he took the shot. Like, I know some people in society, just regular society, that are really not the same, like, since this COVID shot thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not. Like, they're slower, right? Their faculties are not as witty anymore, right? And this is a real thing. I'm not saying this happens to everybody who takes the shot, and it's not like I don't like you if you did take the shot. I'm just saying, like, you know, there's really different effects out here. So it's kind of like a gamble. You know what I'm saying? But also, I did want to really highlight, like, it's these city workers. So we're at the point now where they're laying off more workers for not getting vaccinated based off of these corporate mandates. So they're like, we don't care what the general populace does, but if you're going to work under the state jurisdiction or the city jurisdiction or wherever that may be, Philly, New York, LA, whatever, right? They want these people to be back. So just this week, 1,000 more people got laid off in so-called New York for not taking the. So what I'm saying is, like, we're at a point where it's still shifting. Like, it's kind of like we're over it, but there's still effects, whether this thing is real or not.
Right.
And I get the point that, like, it should be their choice if they need to take needles. If I recall in school, we was told say no to drugs, but last time I checked, everything that these health pharmacy agencies have, they are legally titled as. They have to be, you know what I'm saying, approved by the Food and Drug Administration. So how do we all have to now say yes to drugs when that was like the earliest lesson? I don't know about everybody, but I remember when we was in school, they had a program, young. It was called DARE. It was like drug, alcohol related something. I forgot. They would come amongst early and be like, say no to drugs, say no to drugs, this, that, and the third, don't take needles, and all of this shit. And it's like, you know, I mean, if we don't know what's in that, and they're blatantly saying this is a drug, I'm still on the fence. Like, I don't really, you know what I mean? I mean, not on the fence, but this is not legit. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, I don't know, man, but it's interesting times. Yeah, that being said, more, I think we should get into a couple of callers.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me ask you this quick fast too. Yusuf just put in the chat about the Joe Biden crack pipes. You heard about that?
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. And as quick as I heard about it,
It was gone, right?
Like, no. The White House is not offering crack pipes. Man, listen, let me tell you something, man. I've seen a clip. Everything Joe Biden, all of this is an op, bro. I'm going to leave that, yo. All of it is an op. What are we talking about there? You know what I mean? We was always taught say no to drugs. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, like real shit, bro. Some lessons is for life. You know what I'm saying? 1 plus 1 is still that. I don't care what nobody says. I took that from the schools. But real talk, yeah, man. I think this is all an op, bro. In my personal opinion, what Biden and them is doing is at a very, it's a desperation undertone to it, right? It's a desperation undertone to it. Like, they're being super extra. Like, as an example, when the COVID hit, they came out with the American Rescue Plan, right? So what did they do in the American Rescue Plan? They distributed finance to major cities or, major resort areas that needed economic relief for the resort. So let's say the city of Atlantic City got, I don't know, X amount of dollars under the American Rescue Plan. But all the people didn't see that fiat. You know what I'm saying? All the people did not see that fiat. That went to the city, and however they distributed, that's how they did it. But everybody didn't have everything to do with that. So now, with the color of law trickery that they did with this American Rescue Plan was because of that, now they're saying anybody who has more than 600 notes of transactions in a year has to report it on taxes because of this American Rescue Plan. That was what the backhanded thing in the American Rescue Plan was about. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, even though the people didn't really benefit from the so-called American Rescue Plan, you know what I mean, lives are being affected in the sense of now they want to, no more, and it's sad because the banks fought back against this, right? The banks, like the actual bank you could walk into, cash and make a deposit, right? Like, they pushed back on this notion of having to report anybody with $600 of income or more, or whatever they want to say, payment, whatever. They said, we're not doing this. And they won that fight. The banks won. They said, no, the standard has been 10,000, anything over 10,000, then, they'll report. But they was like 600, that's way too crazy. So since they took the L to the banks, they then tried to flip it on the newer system, you know what I'm saying? The Venmo, Cash Apps, etc. You know what I'm saying? So it's like all of this under color of law, under the American Rescue Plan, and what Americans have they really rescued? You know what I mean? Yeah. What people benefited from that? I know, personally, I didn't get nothing from the American Rescue Plan. I've seen, a big portion of America, as I know it, collapse. It's not the same. What rescue? Yeah. What rescue?
Yeah, the rescue and stuff's worse.
Like, where? Yeah. Biden talking about giving out. I'm like, all of this, y'all don't realize, man. Y'all don't realize, like, I don't know. I mean, that's all a corporate jurisdiction, but there was, I don't know. I don't like what's going on right now. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I don't like what's going on right now with what they trying to do. Yeah. But I know either way, it shows a sign of desperation for them. because their thing collapsed. And the thing we've shown since this pandemic is that the corporations' weakness is health, right? They ran the numbers down. They ran the numbers down when the COVID thing first hit. It was only like 900,000 something hospital beds under the United States jurisdiction. Throughout what they call the United States, there was only 900,000 hospital beds. That's it, right? And you have, each so-called state has multiple millions of people. So, like, there's not even enough hospital beds for everybody, right? In one state, let alone the whole nation, right? So, you know what I mean? So, it's a lot. It showed that, like, the weaknesses in the health area. You know what I mean? And that's how I see it. I don't know, like I said before, this was a continuum. I know this gets into speculation. If it was a continuum of the attacks on the world trade, like, because it was obvious that there was an effort to, you know what I'm saying, make a statement about world trade when they did the towers and all of that. But, like, this virus really stopped world trade for a minute. And some things are still like that. Like, I don't know if anybody went, like, shopping on the solstice, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't even in the stores no more.
Yep.
You can't get it because it gets stuff in on the ports.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they had ships out in the sea waiting for months to deliver goods. You know what I'm saying? So, like, world trade is a thing. Like, the effect on it is a real thing, present day. So, like, you know, you go into Best Buy, they got cameras and printers and everything on display, but none in stock. You know what I mean? They're telling you the closest store is the next state away with this stuff, and they might not have it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, the trade aspect of what this would, you know what I mean? Like, there's a big effect on it, you know, a big effect as far as international.
Yeah. Yeah, more. They still have those collars on there? You check those.
Yeah. That is a fact. That is a fact. We do have a few callers here. So let's start with, and we thank all of y'all for tuning in and raising your hand to add on, ask a question, comment, concern, whatever. So let's start with caller 845-807. Peace, you live on the air. You with this? Islam, or I'm here.
Islam.
Islam, my brother Aqua Zimbe. I appreciate y'all just doing this broadcast for so many years now. And y'all had like a bunch of points tonight. But I guess the first thing that I was thinking about when you're speaking with the Underground Railroad, and like Nobudrali Ali said, he brought us something that we can't tear up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like so much evidence is hidden in plain sight of like our empire. And so just the way too, like history got like reconstructed and inverted with like the hybrids were the first people in bondage. You know, there was Moorish who was like abolitionists probably stopping that, you know, prior to the whole like Moorish being put into bondage.
Right.
So like when you look at even just like all the farmland, like so up in like the Northeast, North America, and just looking at the farms and how they've been passed down for like through like the hybrid, they probably had them 4 or 5 generations, maybe at most. And you know, when we think like 1800s, that's only, you know, like that 4 or 5 generations ago. And so like those farms that we now see, and we're like, oh yeah, that was the, you know, some European surname, that was their farm. So it was like that was really some Moorish estates prior to that even.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at the terrain, like here in this area, there's all these like these rock walls built throughout like that, like they parallel all the roadways, all the waterways, and they say that there's like hundreds of thousands of miles of these stone walls. It's just like small 20-pound stones, 50 pounds, something like 100 pounds, whatever. But they say that there's more weight in those stone walls than in all the pyramids in the world combined.
Wow.
So it's like this super vast network, but it don't seem like, because the stone walls is only 3 feet high, but they go for 100,000 miles. Some of them are high, some of them are like 6, 8 feet high. But then between that, and then I was also thinking there's these things they call like these native, quote unquote, Native American markers, where they would take a young tree and bend it over and cut the top branch off, and then the side branch would grow up straight, and then it would make like this crook in the tree, and that would be an identifier for like water or for just different things. So as far as like with the Underground Railroad and all the markers and stuff, so all these like stone walls up here in the north, and then like with those trees, how like it's just all signs that's being left by just people, like I'm saying, 5 generations ago. But it's like with those with the eyes to see and ears to hear, it's like it's all still here. So yeah, just y'all talking about that was just making me think about those sort of things. I don't know if it's Mizraim, if you know those, or Cujo, if you've seen those up in Canaanland, like those stone walls. And you say peace. Islam, thank y'all.
Islam.
Indeed. I'll say like up in the Catskills, like up like north, so-called New York, like you could kind of catch that too. Like in certain places you ride and you're like, hold on, these stones are like very symmetrical.
Yeah.
Like, are these mountains or are these pyramids? Right? Like, even years ago on the way out Pittsburgh, Cujo, when you was doing the lecture out there on the way, and it's certain things you can only see from the train route. It was like this big mountain, but it was so geometrically perfect. I'm like, is that a mountain or overgrown, like a pyramid with overgrowth on it? You know what I'm saying? Like, like sometimes deeper than what meets the eye, right? Like, yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised because, there are certain places, where things of that are like, these type of things exist kind of off of the beaten path, but they're out there, right? We know, like, we've seen even smaller pyramids in Virginia. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a real thing. So when you say you see these walls going for however many miles, and the weight in them weighs more than, the pyramids in Egypt, whatever, like, I'm not surprised because, all of this, like, we were everywhere. So what we could do there, we could do here, and likewise. And again, it's not like it's impossible. It's a reason why that emblem of the pyramid is on the back of the one Federal Reserve note. To remind you, what we do. Like, I don't know. I know they claimed a lot, but I don't think we've fallen for the fact that they built the pyramids in Egypt or even here in America. I don't think we'll fall for that one. Black mental status, I don't think they fall for that, right? Or some of them,
they better not. They better not.
From a real world historical way, like, no, that's like what we do. You know what I mean? That's what we did. And it doesn't always have to be a pyramid to be, monumental or colossal or worthy of, I don't want to say worthy of praise, but admiration for the skill, for the craft, the true masonry, right? That's the real masonry, the building, the stones, the bricks. You know what I mean? So when we get into that, it's like, okay, now we can take the myth out of this, right? We can take the myth out of this and deal with the facts. Like, this is our science. Everything that we do is symbology of that. It's like, you got, somebody paints an image, that could be a work of art, but it's an image. It's not like, it's not the image of Yahshua. You know what I mean? Like, they can paint him as pale, whatever, but that's not him. That's just the image. So, sometimes we got to look deeper than what we're just seeing on the surface. And, when we really take a look at these things, the pyramids, the stones, and all of that, which you were saying, and you asked me, I'm like, yeah, I do believe I've seen something deeper up in the Catskill Mountains. Like those weren't just mountains. Like, you know, those look like solid rock foundations of colossal buildings. And you can see National Geographic, they got carved out on the side of rocks. They carved out buildings and, you know, entrances to go through the caves, because that's another myth too. Like, you know, the Europeans were in caves, they were, but that's because we put them there. And if you look at the history, we put them there, but we had to know about it first. So who was really the first dealing with these different terrains and, you know what I mean, hideout, whatever you want to call it. Like, it ain't like they, you know, just popped up there. Like, no, I recall, what was it? They had to walk through the desert with bare feet and hot sand. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it was, yes, I get it. Slavery is not just something that deals with one specific type of people. Like, it you know what I mean? Noble Drew Ali said it the best. Every nation suffers slavery. Every nation has. It's not like it's just one nation. Like, no, every nation has. But I think there's something specific in a certain sense dealing with Moors who, according to Noble Drew Ali, their nationality, the free national name was taken away from us in 1779. I think the experience that is uniquely ours with it is different in a sense here in America than anybody else's, right? Because it's just so much that goes with it. Like, yes, everybody has to declare their free national name and religion for the constitutional government, not no de facto, but constitutional wise, right? So it's like, that being the case, as I referenced earlier, us not, like, the presumption is, for most of us, like, not most of us, but historically speaking, the presumption was we were slaves unless we could prove otherwise. I don't know if that actually applied to every other nation like that, though. You know what I mean? Like, I never heard of the presumption of all, let's say, Venezuelans being assumed slaves unless they could prove otherwise. Like, I never heard of that. Because Venezuela is a nationality, but then maybe again it's not, because, you know, Venezuela was named by colonists for Venice. You know what I mean? It's a Latin phrase for Venice. It's speaking about Othello. You know what I'm saying? But that's all Venezuela means. So is it a nationality? When Noble Drew Ali was saying we're Moorish Americans because we're descendants of Moroccans born in America, was he just talking North America? He definitely wasn't talking just United States. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but it's really interesting, and your brother just dropped. So with that being said, I think unless you want to add something or Cool Joe Park.
Oh no, more. I'm straight.
Let's get to the next caller. Caller 218-673. Peace, you live on the air. You with us, man? Islam. 673. Okay, peace, more Islam. Thanks for holding too.
Islam. Rob Royal Dan L. Northwestern Maxim. Oh, brother, Mitchell, I am. You go by L or Bay? I know your mom is Bay.
Man, boy, you know me too long to be asking me these questions, bro. I'm gonna tell you
man, the energy, the fluctuation, oh man, the vibration. I mean, even the callers, you know, this is. I mean, and then the day and the times, and I can't. It's a strange sensation, a strange influx that's taking place. And it's moving like in a way that, wow. I mean, even while you know and can see, it still has you like in a drunken state. That's me. And so many things to be done, so much work to be done, so many things to address. It's just that awesome. So I just, you know, because I don't want to ever, be on your call again and actually can't say your whole complete appellation, But, brain hell, bro. All right, I thank you for that, my brother. And again, with all honor, respect for the wisdom and the platform, honor to you, Grand Chief, and Cujo, as well.
Peace, man.
I tell you, it's a dynamic situation always when, the way you go in, the way the Grand Chief compliments it all with his sharing and bringing up the facts and the notes, and then even the caller, when I think I might have forgot what I was waiting on, they just bring it all back in, and then when you turn around and express, your comment on top of that bill, it brings us back to circle one. So, the energy and the fluctuation of it, the vibration of it, I give thanks to the mothers for having us here. All honor and respect to the family as well for listening in. The beauty of it all is that, just to mention on the last bill dealing with cat skill, there's a connection of an analogy between the significance of cat skills in the name, the same as in the analogy of the village in Jersey, where there's a significance of Othello. And, so these things we don't lose sight of, or at least Grand Chief, when Israel mentioned the Youssef interview, and I also believe it was Youssef, Brother Youssef, who you asked to share about study. And the significance of that is that the way he broke it down in terms of the different levels of study, how it becomes different as you go along and more entrenched. So when Brother Israel speaks about this here entrenchment and brother, when you make it sound like, what is this thing about proving? Now, it's all, to me, clear and simple in the sense that, and before I, put the cart before that horse, I'll just say this, that two experience. One before I even walked into the light, and was graced to have it shared with me. In my younger days, I used to study with different folks, and we got a whole of books that I haven't seen in a while. And one was almost the whole library of, well, couldn't be all of them, but a few different takes on the notes from congressional hearings. Mm. And, at that time, as I'm reading about their words in terms of the arguments that's taking place, behind the doors of the so-called Congress. And, I'm hearing them referencing blacks and slaves and the way their whole attitude and, looking at it then, it was like, ew, this is terrible. Almost like the way you felt with that document where Sean do that to New Jersey law and how it stems from the federal law or level of law, quote unquote law. Even though you made it clear that it has nothing really, but no real connection to the Constitution.
Mm.
Now, in terms of the move forward with the level of study. So when I came into the light, after my experience at the MSP of A that I first went into, with no regrets, I went through certain things, but there was a greater purpose when I attended the celebration of the Honorable Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. And there at that celebration, there was an elder there who gave testimony. And she was close to 90, if not over 90, closer to 100. And her testimony stated that she lived in Texas. And at that time, they owned their own property. There was no slavery and plantation type thing then. However, there were these poor, homeless, helpless, melanin recessive. I'm not sure what word she used to describe them, whether she called them Caucasian or what. But she said they used to come and we used to feed them. You know, they were not ashamed to ask because they know we would give. And that the other neighborhood, and they had neighbors who were not all, poor. They had some who were able to manage. And so there we see, or I hear in her testimony, an example of a fact that it seems like these other records are trying to contradict, and duplication and replication and overlaying has always been a trick, that I find that the term technology applies to well. And so I say that testimony gave strength and witness to my need, which is constant, for sustaining purpose for everywhere I go, everywhere I be, everything I do. It has to have that ladder up to real things around me, applications to go forth with, directional fortitude to give, how you say, a destination for the use of my mind, my existence. So, then when we come back to the idea of the question of that, prove that you are such and such, it's so simple to me that the fact is that although the entrenched training might be an hindrance and all of miseducation that caused it are hindrances, however, to be clear, meaning being clear, as Mom's mother Mariah Bay always shares, is that to be clear, then your being clear is the becoming. Because once you're clear, you become it. All right? And even though we're reaching out to the babies who may not have ever heard of it, and even though we know there's a lot that all they got to do is Google or something, but we also know that one of the enemies of truth has always been overload of information and a lot of disinformation in between, trying to hold on to truth to try to find a stand to confuse. And so, you know, there's grace and benefit and favor of being able to sit at the Moorish Heritage and History School for any length of time, and now to go on to the RBA publication for any length of time is, you know, those things are so significant in our study level, our perception level into cleansing some of that entrenched training of which caused us to become those things that allow and accept things that are not as though they were. And so the proof then therefore becomes the fact that the law is that if you're making a claim against me, you have to prove your claim. I have to prove mine. For mine is a true fact that existence and a being. Now, the trick of it though is that our thinking is that permission Christian mentality thought pattern of asking, oh, can I be a moral? You know, and if you're walking like that, then you haven't declared it yet. And so it makes the charge sound more harmful to you versus the reality of that goes beyond prima facie evidence. It's solid evidence of human trafficking, denationalization, and other high crimes of treason. Now, that might make people think it's more complicated, but again, you know, that's the fact. And, you know, that's some of the work that really, not so much may need to be done, but if we can realize that much, then some of our activities may not really be geared the way they ought to, and the perception, for instance, my perception is this. The only reason why you're allowed to operate is because we adopted you. However, we didn't say come and do as you please. So you have limits and boundaries. And because you've crossed them, you see what I'm saying? But now the thing is that the only reason why you continue to cross is because you're not getting enough challenges. You know, people talk about the real one, the spirit man, and you know, the sword. You know, I mean, it's the word. That's the power. But we also know that you can't. You can't be heard if you don't speak. So if somebody's stepping on your toe, standing on your foot, and you ain't saying nothing, then I hate to say it, but damn, if they break your toes, it's good for you. Yep. You know, that's almost what it boils down to. And I mean, you know, when I say it, and that, you know, again, push back to the reality of what's really happening around us. And how simple it is. Now, it's not.
Peace more.
Peace more. Someone tried to take it.
No, I think your phone just tripped out.
Yeah, I'm hearing the echoes. Yeah, so my so yeah, my major point though is how it all comes full circle and realizing that it comes full circle and realizing that, it's some of our most simple activities that prove otherwise, and that's why they can make a claim like that. And we know the international community never accepted that. And Grand Street, Kutu Abuel, you had the other brother from Germany. I'm not saying his appellation, but who, he testified that, oh yeah, we knew that, but we thought it was okay when they called him black or something like that.
Yeah, right and exact. Yeah, Brother Sheldon L.
Yes, something else. And so, that's just showing us how, probably 1,000 other more have most likely experienced that wherever they went in other countries. That the realization is that, there's respect, and part of the high level of respect is that I can't force this on you, but I do know who your ancestors are. You know what I'm saying? I do know who you really are. At the same time, though, the law here is that, and everywhere is that if you don't stand on, your proper square, and the prophet told us, why should anyone respect us?
Straight up.
So a lot of things are happening, and folks are getting away with a lot of things, and sometimes the things seem small, but when we look at how things are really connected, that's where chapter 1 comes into the most vivid, instruction on how to remember who you are and what you connected with, because your spirit, man, and it shows how things are so connected that what we look at as a small thing might be a large thing, and what we look at as a large thing might be the small thing. And so our energy, which we're supposed to direct, you see, then we have it going in a opposing direction, and then we wondering why and how, and well, that's on us. So especially to the new Moors that are listening and the younger Moors that are listening, and you are the guys who we are here to actually protect and not carry forward in the sense that we holding your hand or picking you up, but in the sense that we're giving you some strength of moral and spiritual and mental support that you might be able to do for self. It's like, the eagle preparing the baby to fly so that they can be able to spread their wings and do those great things in the sky. So the same way, this is what, that spirit man is sharing with spirit man. are and what the applying the things that the prophet taught us. And as long as you really start getting into the studies proper and make that first step to those places where we keep pointing you that have the foundation for what you need to walk and talk, to strengthen and exercise your mental capabilities, to find yourself and know that all that training and miseducation and constant influx of media apparatus propaganda is not necessarily who you are, who you will ever be, and it's purposely not so. Even the whole educational institution was set up to be against you. However, because truth and love and light and power, favor and grace are all on your side, then within anything that stands, there are gems for you to go in and get what you need. Indeed. It's just that some of us get lost and try to hold those things up that need to fall because we spend time. They held it up long enough to get you in and so you can get the gems out so that we can do what we got to do. That's the way I see it. And I know that's long-winded, but forgive me. And I just thank you guys. I thank you.
Islam, more.
Islam, I rest and I'll listen. Indeed. Likewise, bro. We appreciate you adding on. Highly appreciate it. We got to get to some more callers. We have a few callers left. A couple of people dropped. I get it. But thank you all for tuning in and whatnot. So we're going to move to caller 229-230. Peace, fam. We live on the air. Thank you for waiting. Islam. Brother L. Right State, off West Connection. How's Brother Cujo and Brother L. doing?
Islam, more, all is well. Peace and love.
Yes, indeed. What I like to address on is you mentioned something about the CDC and the vaccine. And what can y'all hear me good? Oh yeah, we can hear you, bro. Okay. Well, the CDC is right down here in the South, and that's where I'm at. But the CDC is a crook. Just be straight to the point. And we got to call a duck and a truck a truck. Mm-hmm. And on the vaccine. Oh yeah, and by the way, the AMA, which is the American Medical Association, they own all the doctors, whether you know it or not. So the doctors gonna be talking in their favor and not in our favor. And by the way, we shouldn't trust them anyway with anything they have. This was high knowledge and how your country teaches me. If Mother Nature don't make it, don't you take it. Mm-hmm. And Mother Nature don't make no disease, nor no vaccine. A vaccine is made in a laboratory. And you don't need no vaccine that's made in a laboratory. Your body is a laboratory itself. If people don't know that, I'm going to tell you. Mm-hmm. And your cells, your body is made of trillions of cells. That's your laboratory. And you need to know this. If not, you're going to be tricked out of your mind. Mm-hmm. I want to read something right quick. And this talking about the human beast. The beast on feet. And this what bringing in this vaccine. It said the sons of Satan will be impressed on their foreheads and
If we're stamped with the red light, a laser will be used to place an engraved mark on the space between their eyes, their forehead, or on the hands of his followers, or injected beneath the skin. Now, how about that? So you see who's working? Man, we can't go along with this mess no more. Everybody children gotta have it up. Why are we still turning to them for everything? They make all the rules. They make all the shots. We playing their game. When is enough is enough? I appreciate y'all, brother.
Islam more.
Because we know more songs of a lot of that. Those who gonna do what's right and not what's wrong. And the last one I like to say, they talking about appointing a sister, a melanated sister on the Supreme Court. What good that gonna do for us? Clarence Thomas already there, and they still killing people in the streets. The police are still shooting them down. So I mean, when enough is enough.
Yeah.
It's time for us to wake up and stand on our square and do what Nova Drew all the other beloved prophet told us to do. He said, study. Study, study, study. That's what he said. How many studying? And then can comprehend what they're studying and interpret what they're studying. They ain't got a shot to give me. And I advise everybody out there on Radio Land to listen. Don't you take no shot because Mother Nature didn't make it. The guy in the laboratory made it, and you're a fool if you can take that shot. And I'll close on that, brother. Islam.
Peace and love more. Islam. Right.
We appreciate your add on. Before you go though, you was reading from a book. Can you quote that book?
Yes, I can. It's from the Holy Tablet. Dr. York Malachi.
Gotcha.
And it's on it's chapter 6. And that verse is 2:15 and 2:16. That's where you'll find it at. It's in the Holy Tablet.
Islam.
All right, thanks, bro. We appreciate your add-on for sure, man.
Yeah, them vaccine, man, them injection, man, and you notice they want everybody to take a shot. You notice that? And then threatening the people with their job and their livelihood, and they know them people need a job, and they use that. So you could be a slave to people when you go get a job. I work for myself. I don't have nobody standing over me telling me what to do. I've been stopped that mess.
Right. Real talk. Real talk. Now let me ask you this too, because you said don't trust doctors, and I absolutely get what you're saying. But I just want to put this out there. I don't know if anybody feels the same way. I think we're at a point in time where it's like even a revolution in the sense in the medical industry, whereas there's a lot of doctors who feel like the shot is not the remedy, and this is why they are losing their job. There's some doctors, so it's like some of them know that this isn't the best way, because I mean the science is what it is. Like whatever their standard of perfection of the imperfect vaccine is, they don't get to that till 5 years in. That's just a fact. That's how it's been. They can say they got the technology to whatever, but they usually, for all the other vaccines at least, it's 3 to 5 years. So, you know what I mean? That's number one. You know what I mean? mean? Like, they do not perfect the vaccine in 1 year, and anybody who believes that, you know what I'm saying, may not have no.
Oh yeah. And another thing, you know, they have all the doctors and they got the vaccine. I asked all the doctors a question, why you can't make no blood? If you so smart and so educated, your body can. I told you the other laboratory can. Why you can't make no blood? Your body can. How about that? You your own doctor. You your own savior. This is what you need to know. We looking outward when we supposed to be looking inward. And that's all I gotta say to that, brother.
Islam.
All right. That being said, Cujo, you want to add on? We had a couple callers drop. I get it from the wait time and whatnot, but you know, I think that was said well.
Yeah.
You know, that's a reference to check out on that subject matter for that matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I just think it's interesting times, and I just want to say this before I yield the floor. Like, there's some doctors who knew since when it first came out that this is really not no real big deal like they're making it. Not to downplay the effects it had on society or what they call COVID-related issues, whether that be, you know, staff shortage or closures, you know. But I don't know, man. It's really kind of interesting as far as the actual effect it had on society, whether it's a real thing or not. But there has been doctors who've known from the jump that it's not that serious.
Yeah.
And I think these are the ones, I could be wrong. You know, there's different doctors who may feel because of their own medical reasons that it's not good for them. But overall, I feel like, you know, they might know a little bit more than what the media is pushing, or they just don't want to get vaccines. Maybe they know that the science is, it takes 5 years. Maybe it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They simply just don't want to take it, whatever it may be. I still feel like, and you know, it's going to be what it is or whatever, that it is definitely a stretch to try to force that, you know what I mean? But anything you want to add on in closing, more, I'm yielding the floor, bro.
Islam, more. I don't have too much after those two elders right there. What more is there to say after that? You know, other than honors. Yeah, peace.
Okay, I don't know if who's on drop, but yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, I definitely appreciate this bill tonight.
Oh, that was my bad.
We added on some good.
I was muted. That was my bad. I was muted. I was saying, no, I was saying after those elders, there's nothing more to say after that. After they drop what they drop, and we're just gonna send, you know, salutations to all the Moors out there that's been listening in, that's been supporting over the years, you know, making sure they stay in tune with MHHS Eyes Wide Open, you know, Sons of Allah, Sisters Standing on Law, and of course now with the Take Your Place series going on, and you know, just keep supporting the real ones, you know, keep supporting the ones who are assisting in you getting out of your mess, you know, not the ones who are creating more mess for you. And again, honors to you, Ms. Great Bill, tonight as usual. You know, I was looking for us to have our moon, but you know, we can't get them all. But we still did something with the post moon energy. So give thanks to all the Moors listening in, and peace and love, and honors to the Prophet, of course.
Hold up, my bad, bro. I gotta put this out there before we go, because we do have about 33 minutes left and 2 more callers just in the queue
Islam.
to say something to add on. So you good? We good? We'll get to these.
Yeah, we're good, man.
Let's see what's.
Yeah, we're straight.
All right, bet. So let's go 443-376. You live on the air. Peace.
Peaceful greetings, beloved brothers. Islam. All is well?
Peace, more Islam.
Islam, brother.
Well.
Garvey, okay. Peace. I was just, I thought you said something about the full moon. So I was just speaking on that. Just very briefly, but before I get to that, Brother Cujo, Brother Miz, as always, because I keep a very close ear. Y'all just very consistent, bro. Like since like 2013, that's when I first like really put my ears on the blog talk. Really, y'all consistent, and that's what I really see as the thing that even keeps me going. I think for me is the consistency, honestly, and just being able to have the different experiences that I had based off of the things that you guys shared, and me not just taking what y'all saying for face value and actually putting my best foot forward and proving it to myself and doing my own due diligence. However, just to move forward on that full moon, I will say, like when the full moon took place, it did take place at the sun degree, I believe, was 28. It was 28 degrees for both of them, actually, Aquarius and Leo. And interestingly, in Leo, 25 to 29 degrees is the astrological degrees, and 22 degrees and 28 degrees is the astrological area, according to the Encyclopedia of Astrology by Nicholas de Wolper. So, with that being said, like just a reflection there on the full moon, it just really shows, a lot of people were reading that book, in 1925 when, Regulus, which is the heart of the lion, was there when actually, the king is here to serve. And you really would look at it these times, it's very prophetic. So, even though the moon still being close in conjunction with Regulus, I think it's about 0 degrees, 8 minutes Virgo. As far as the procession from where it was in 1925, that, it would just really give, a fulfillment, so to speak, when it really comes to, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. If you would really look at the astrological areas like prophecy fulfilled, because 28 degrees is nearing the end of it, right? And then being in conjunction with, the heart of the lion, which most people would look at like the heart of the king, the core Leon, right? With it being in Virgo, it's like the king is serving. So, and that would really just be for me, at the end of the day, a symbol pertaining to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, to someone who actually has the status pertaining to what one could see as royalty. However, it is nobility. At the same time, he's still like ones would see in certain so-called holy books or law books, as far as someone being the divine, however, being able to come down to earth and assist the people. So for me, right, I'm just giving my my personal, so to speak, as far as I see that, me enjoying the astrology, and first being reminded via rebate publications and being a student, still pertaining to Moorish Heritage and History School, I can just see that in, knowing myself and really being into the astrology, this full moon has really been able to allow me to really appreciate the work that I see that Prophet Noble Drew Ali has actually put on the record for more than 100 years ago. So I can only, in my head and in my heart, really just kind of reflect on that and say, like, man, when meeting Prophet Noble Drew Ali in his literature and seeing the consistency that is there with Moorish Heritage and History School, and the consistency in really making sure that the language is always correct. The only thing that I could really say is I really thank you all for providing an experience for me to be able to remember to appreciate the little things, such as the literatures, especially when it comes to what Prophet Noble Drew Ali has expressly prescribed. And with that, I yield the floor, beloved brothers. Islam.
Islam, more. Give thanks for that.
Islam, more. Likewise, man. Glad we can do some good, and that's what's really good. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the next caller. Caller 347.
Play game.
Hold on, y'all.
Play a game. That's fine.
It's loud. Everybody in?
Peace more.
It's loud, yeah. Yo, my fault. I know I hit it late. I'm sorry. I was supposed to hit it earlier. I didn't want to send my Islam to all the boys listening. Cujo, especially to you, the guard dog, for all you do. Man, straight to you for everything that you do. I didn't want to say that this young Moors come up in this shit with their eyes wide open, and I definitely know what's up. I got people who listening, Cujo, and man, could y'all explain the metaphysical if y'all can, and if y'all got time, you don't really got to, but they don't really understand the metaphysical part. Like stuff. But that's all I got. Right. Well, what metaphysical part? Like what part of metaphysical? Man, I really don't know, but for some reason they want to hear elders speak of it. They don't shut up, man. Because they don't get my way of speaking it because I speak with fire, and I don't really be trying to care about all the emotions that they care about and their thoughts and opinions. So I don't know. I guess to some degree they don't understand the I don't even know what they don't understand. But it's just the metaphysical part because I don't even get that part. But you ain't got to do it. Yeah, I ain't trying to spend y'all time doing it. I went to my love to the Moors. That's what I came up here to do. And that's all I need. But that's it.
Islam more.
You want to give me something out the metaphysical Bible?
I was just looking for something.
Wait, what happened?
I was just looking for something. So let's just say
So we're not clear on what part of metaphysics. I don't know if you want to give them something. I could go grab a reference just to break down what it actually is from a lawful perspective, but I don't have that literature in front of me at the moment.
yeah.
I think we might have to do another class on that if that's what y'all really want. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, are we funny or something? Like, to be real, they just told me they don't really get it. They wanted to hear y'all version of how y'all say it, which is something I don't really want y'all to do because they should get it from them reading, and that's how I push it. So now that I understand what they don't get, y'all ain't even got to do that. I do things a little bit differently, so y'all can just close it out.
Islam.
Indeed, Islam. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to go back and just do a whole class starting off with metaphysics because we have references. We could drop jewels off the top of our head, but like if we kind of understood what they're not understanding, we would have something to go off.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just be speaking in vain, trying to define metaphysics, you know what I mean, in 25 minutes. If there was something specific we could address, like if they didn't understand or comprehend, you know, the 5-point star, the meaning of metaphysics, like we could drop some jewels on that, but we don't understand what they don't understand. So we're gonna move on. We appreciate the call in, the add on, the inquiry, but we just don't know where to go with that with the time we have left. So we're gonna move on and peace to all y'all. Still study, keep studying. All right, that being said, we're going to go to caller 682-360. Peace, fam. We live on the air.
Islam, man. Cool, Joe.
Islam more.
Honest to y'all. Honest to
Like what?
Prophet Noble Drive. Honest to Allah. That's highest praise. Honest to Marcus Garvey, the forerunner, right? And so they want a metaphysical point of view, right? Well, you would have to go to the Quran, the first chapter, and give you that metaphysical point of view. Even with the first line, when it say, time never was, and man was not, right? just in that right there, is she the thinking. Like Nova Jolly said, it's two selves. You got a higher self and you got a lower self. Right? So without your body, the body, without your spirit, the body is just a body. When somebody dies, they laying there just as they is, right? What moves the body? Right? Nova Jolly said, the actions of the soul, thinking, understanding, right? Reason. When you do this with your soul, we all know we got a soul, right? So when you do this with your soul, where are these thoughts coming from? You can't see their thoughts. It's metaphysical, right? These thoughts are of your higher self. We all are connected to Allah. Understand that. Know that. Right? And so when you think about life as we see it, or as we think we see it, everything in life is vibrating. Your spirit, your soul, and your body is vibrating at different frequencies. As they say, man fails. Right? So the frequency of your spirit started moving at a slower rate until it started to manifest as flesh. Now you can see it. If you speed something up, it's a good example in the movie Lucy. In the car, there's a car speed. You look it up on YouTube. As the car speed up, it began to disappear. That's how you know the vibration. Right? So, as you begin to raise your vibrations up, you begin to see certain things that other people can't see. Not as far as with your eyes, as far as with your other eye. The eye that you can't see. The pineal gland. When you start to use intuition, that's speeding up your vibration. All of these things are in the Quran. Go back to the Quran. Go back to the Quran, it'll show you everything. For the young brothers and sisters that just asked, right? So, you gotta know it.
Right. And that's what I'm going to cut your wisdom, because everything you're saying is right and exact. Right. But I think it was the question was posed, like your everything you're saying is right and exact, but I didn't really comprehend what was it that they didn't understand, right? Because it's like, right. Yes, everything is right in chapter 1, but metaphysics has so many levels to it. It's like, what part didn't they get? So that's what I'm saying. Like, hopefully we could revisit that. But I know I don't want to cut your wisdom. I want you to see, but I wanted to add this on real quick. Yeah, go ahead. This is out of the Table Black's Law Constitution. This is how it's defined there. Just, because again, this is just a general reference, but it's special. But I'm referencing this because, just to center what the subject is that they even brought up. So they was asking, can we break down metaphysics? But it's like, what part? Because the definition of metaphysics in law is the science of being, like just being yourself or whatnot, like the science of being. The science which deals with ultimate reality. Vineland Trust Code versus Westendorf, 86 NJ Equity. Well, what part of ultimate reality was it that they didn't understand? It's kind of like what I didn't get. You know what I mean? Like, did they want to talk about stars? Did they want to talk about love?
Right.
You know what I mean? Did they want to talk about time? You understand what I'm saying? Like how you just broke it down. That's in chapter 21. The ultimate reality, like you said, is that time is an illusion. It's an instrument we use to measure on this planet, but it's something that really doesn't exist in the supreme design of things, right? That's one aspect of the reality. So, you know what I mean? There's many other, you know what I mean, reality aspects that are metaphysical. And I think that's what, like, you know what I mean? The science of being, like, those epiphanies that just hit you, like, you know, it's just so much to it, bro. But yeah, I have to totally agree. Chapter 1 is definitely metaphysical. And, you know, I think that's definitely the driving force on the divine side, which makes the national manifest. And again, what I'm saying right now, I don't think I'm answering that question because I don't know what exactly it is they were unclear about. But yeah, it's such a, like saying, explain mathematics. And then you say, all right, well, what branch of mathematics? Are we talking multiplication, addition, division? You know what I'm saying? Subtraction, like what algebra, like what part of mathematics, what part of metaphysics, what branch were they confused about? I don't know. So, you know what I mean? I think that we would have just structured it a little bit more clear. We could have went in on it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But you have to know what part of it is because it's so deep. Exactly. But when Nova Jolie said time never was when man was not, he was basically explaining how we are a part of Allah, the creator, the universe, right? The creator of the universe. That same consciousness, that same wisdom, that same energy is within us, right? So it never was a time when this consciousness or this wisdom wasn't on the planet. It just fell and started vibrating at a slower rate. And then you got to see it with your eyes. Like you can't see the air, but you can breathe it. You know it's there. All right? What we call the Holy Ghost. It's there. You know what I'm saying? And without that breath, which is a spirit, you wouldn't be existing. You know what I'm saying? So that same energy is within you. But then you also got the body, which is those desires, those tribulations, those things that you go through, right? That's your lower self. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole battle of life. There's nothing more than that, right? Metaphysical. Since we've been here since the beginning. But like we said, there's different aspects. You got light, you got, you know, frequencies of light, the light spectrum, the chakras, that's identifying with a certain vibration or color, the same color that's going through your body. You know what I'm saying? But it's different levels. It's different. I'm getting ahead of myself. There's different levels too that we can't keep. Yeah. Right. There's levels. And so you have to know what it is, like you're saying, that you're trying to add, so you can be clear on your response. But I would say, study yourself, both of them. How are you connected to everything around you? How is thought processed? And sometimes you might think of something, right? Or you might think of somebody and they call you. Because we all connected on a higher level. But as we live in this physical, we live in our own experience through the lower self. But we still all connected, and we all are a part of Allah. I would suggest to the young brother and sister, go get the Quran questionnaire for Moorish American, and go get the Holy Quran. Start from chapter 1. Read it all the way through. And then read those 101. Quran questionnaire. And it'll get you to thinking. And it'll give you a basis on what metaphysics is, and what your lower self is. You know? And so I hope I helped the young brother and sister. You know what I'm saying? It's been a minute since I've been on the call. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still listening. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to build, you know what I'm saying, a temple. Get this temple going. First temple in Dallas. You know what I'm saying? So we can teach our people what nationality is, and not only what nationality is, what your higher self is, and your lower self. You know
that's the key. That's definitely the key, bro. Oh yeah.
And find you,
definitely.
You know what I'm saying, a temple. I ain't gonna lie to you. Major Ali set the temple up as a religious corporation for the protection under the First Amendment of your nationality.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
it started off civic, but I think the issue is that whether we say it's religious or civic, it
right.
When you get down to it, it all is civic in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, because the is protected in the laws of the land, which is supposed to govern or protect civil society, right? So when we talk about civilization and where we are domiciled, you know, the law of the land is the Constitution, right? And that protects the divine and national attributes. But I want to say this too. You know, I have nothing against Noble Drylee personally or what he did. I just feel like today there is some, not all, there is some temples who have taken this position that they're holier than thou, they're holier than us. And if we don't attend their temple, we're not real Moorish type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's sad to see. And I feel like it's not even my feelings, it is a fact. In the Library of Congress, you know, there's a bunch of maxims on the second floor, and one of them is that the only temple in the universe is the body of man, and that being generic, you know what I mean, talking about the species, man and woman, basically, like we are our temples. So that being the case, I also give much respect to what he envisioned as far as the Moorish Science Temple of America, not of the United States or anything. He said of America, right? So, you know, that's continental. That's not, you know, that's not a subsection of a continent. Like America, North and South and Central and adjoining islands.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when you look at it like that, it's kind of interesting. So I think, you know, in these days, yes, that is definitely needed, but it has to come from the purest place of what the intentions were. Because it was civic, it was divine and national, or religious and national. Right. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so it can't be like we leave one aspect of it out and forget how important it is. Like, we're a nation that's supposed to be subject to colonialism. Like, I don't think that's what his message was. I don't have anything that suggests that is what he was talking about. Yeah. Especially after looking at the divine warning to the nations, not just to the members of the MST of A. And I'm only saying that because
it has been said by certain members of the MSTFA in modern days, not even when he was on the scene, but in modern days, that, and you know what I mean, you can't be a real Moor unless you're in this association or temple or whatever. And it's not. You know, the people come before their institutions, and we need to realize, again, I guess we could say, I mean, to me, that's common sense, but that might be metaphysical to some in a certain mind state of not realizing this is nationality. This isn't like choosing to be a Presbyterian or a Baptist or, you know what I'm saying, a Catholic or, you know what I mean, Latter-day Saint. Like, nationality isn't a choice like that, right? Like, it's really interesting, like, how we view it. You know what I mean? How some of us view it. Like it's a choice or something like that, when it's not. It's just simply bloodline, simply nationality, man.
So,
Right. That's the order. The civic, you right about the civic part. The civic part was, he started it as a civic organization to teach us nationality and teach us the law, Constitution, right? Because we understood that you needed protection. Right, he said because. No, he was mentioning the fact that because a lot of the work became largely religious, a religious affidavit was adapted to that nature to adopt the name and, you know, incorporate under a religious faction. Because remember, when he put the call out, who said they love Jesus, yes, that is true. But it was still civic, right? Because you talk about religious freedom, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can be a part of whatever you want if that's your choice, but your nationality doesn't change because of your religious choice. Right. You might not your customs based off of the quote religion you choose, so-called religion. That might not be your ancient customs that you're living out or believing in, but still your nationality don't change. Like you are what you know what I mean? You know who you are. And I think that that's the part that gets, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not advocating for any other religion or anything. I'm just saying we really got to get clear that, you know, you don't, it's not like you choose to be a Moor. You acknowledge that you are or you don't. But whatever religion you choose to practice or whatever, that doesn't determine your nationality. You know what I mean? Like I think that's something we can use. Like, you know what I mean? Like he didn't say you were more. Right. Yeah, like he didn't say we read the Holy Quran and Mecca. Yes, there's authority that derives from that and has things to do with customs. But at the same time, it's like, you know what I mean? We're Moorish Americans because we're descendants of Moroccans born in America. So that's our birthright. You know what I mean? Anything outside of that is secondary to that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We were called something else. But we were Moors before we was called black people. You know what I'm saying? Noble Joalitas understood that he needed to bring that back. You know what I'm saying? So he started the Moorish scientific to teach our people who they were. But he understood that before the nationality, you need to know who you are in connection with Allah. And also the lower stuff. So that's where the religious creed, the divine creed, what we call it, kicks in. And that's why I believe he came back and started, incorporated as a religious incorporation. Also, because just like the Catholic Church, right? In the Vatican, they're a dual society. If you look up a dual society, they have they are their own body politic with a set of laws.
Our laws will be the divine constitution and bylaws. This is the laws for the temple, like the Catholic Church. They have their own set of rules, their own set of laws. So it's not to be misunderstood. In connection with the First Amendment of the Constitution, you can protect that, right? So he understood on paper. It's not to be confused. And also, as you uplifting humanity and building finance, right, that brings unity of us together, bringing us all back into one direction. So we all could be on the same page, right? But that's not to say that any Moor that's not in the temple is not a Moor. You're a Moor because you're a descendant, right? And so he just brought it back to us. But he also understood that you have to correct the character and the mental to bring yourself in line with our life. And so, you know, that's my piece on it. More I know it's about to close down on.
Islam. Yeah, give thanks for that, more. Islam.
You know, we draw lead like, of course, all praise due to Allah. Peace and love.
Indeed. Thanks. And again, I just want to give acknowledgement. Thank the brother Cujo for being here. We are us doing this every third Thursday of every month. I definitely enjoyed the build tonight. I trust we all got some good out of it, some information to look up or comprehend, understand. And shout out to Canaanland Moors, all the Moors in the chat, everybody who called in, all the Moors in the queue, etc. Moors Heritage and History School, Eyes Wide Open, Blog Talk Radio, Harvey Bay Publications, Canaanland Moors. I definitely wanted to play some closeout music, but we have precisely 1 minute left for this time block. And we will be back next month again on the 17th, so-called St. Patrick's Day. So you know we're going to get into some history. And Cujo, the day after that is the full moon. So we got it next month. I was mentioning that we usually had the full moon this month. We a day after the full moon, and then next month we're a day before the full moon.
Yeah, we can't make this up.
All is well, fam.
Yeah, we can't make this up.
In the meantime, y'all stay tuned to Canaanland Moore's YouTube page, and we'll be back.
Straight.
We'll be back next month, and you definitely can tune into Canaanland Moore's YouTube page to get content on it almost on that daily. So with that being said, we appreciate you all, and we'll see y'all next month here on Moorish Heritage and History School Blog Talk Radio. Peace, man.
Peace, Morris.
All right, and I don't know, Cujo. I think Cujo did drop out earlier, but for sure, still appreciation, much acknowledgement, much respect.
Oh, yeah, I'm here, Morris. Just muted. Islam, Morris. Peace and love.
Yeah, no, I thought you had dropped out earlier because I don't know if you missed the question about the metaphysics.
No, I heard that part. Yeah, I heard that.
I guess. Yeah, that was the unanswerable. But we can break something down, I guess, next month or something like
Islam.
that. We'll just dedicate, you know what I'm saying, a class to that.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically talk about, but I guess an overall view, we could definitely do that. So that being said, I look forward to that one or whatever's next, man. But again, thanks to you, fam, and shout out to all Canaanland Moors.
Islam.
Islam.